Welcome to Classic Trials. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we make sense of the law one bite at a time. In this series, we observe and analyze the play-by-play of some of the biggest trials that have shaped the public consciousness of the American judicial system. In this season, we're working our way through the case of California v. Erik and Lyle Menendez. Growing up in Princeton, New Jersey, and then Beverly Hills, California, these young men had everything they could ever want, or so it seemed, until one night on August 20th, 1989, they approached Jose and Kitty Menendez with newly purchased shotguns. Put on trial for murdering their own parents, they claimed self-defense, arguing they were terrorized in their own home by abusive parents until they could take no more. Which argument is more convincing? Come join and see for yourself. All right. Happy Monday, everybody. All right, we've got another episode of Classic Trials, Menendez Monday, 49, episode 49. Isn't that crazy? We've been doing this. We've done this 48 times so far. We've got another one today. I hope you guys had a wonderful weekend and a wonderful week last week. To the members, I'm so sorry that I couldn't end up putting together the members only stream after I was traveling on Friday, but I hope you guys had a wonderful weekend regardless. Also, and I see it in the chat, the members emojis, unfortunately it doesn't show up. The images don't show up on StreamYard, but if I pull it onto the screen, but you can see it right there in the chat, that we have a couple Christmas emojis, holiday emojis that were made by the artist who made the originals, as well as my profile picture on Twitter/X. So wonderful little sort of Christmas gift from the artist to me and to all of you guys, because obviously this is for members to be able to use freely. So very excited to have that in the chat. And yeah, so Brittany Chanel, I graduated Friday. Congratulations very much so. I don't know what that means, very much so. Anyway, what I meant to say is congratulations. That is awesome, huge accomplishment. And I hope you're able to celebrate appropriately. So folks, yeah, I hope you guys are having a good one so far. Also, I did see it earlier. Debbie Faison Cook. For some reason, it's not showing up in StreamYard, but I saw earlier in the regular chat that Debbie Faison Cook gifted one membership earlier. Thank you once again. I think you were trying to get it to Ardo, but it didn't work out. I can't remember who I saw got it, but to the person that got it, welcome to Bike Club, or welcome back. I can't remember if this was, I think it was I Love Pie. Welcome to Bike Club. So yeah, anyway, but yes, thank you once again to Debbie for gifting that that membership. I'm a little bit scrambled right now. Very wonderful, very kind and generous. And yes, also thanks from I Love Pie. So wonderful. One of the things that I love about this community is the generosity of the people in it. So, all right, folks, let's get to it, shall we? We've got another day of testimony from Erik Menendez. Another day of cross-examination. So we will see how this goes. The first few minutes are some I think some housekeeping matters, or some argument about some photos of Kitty at the crime scene. I can't remember what the ruling was. I was trying to kind of go through a little bit quickly just for the timestamps, basically. But other than that, this is going to be about 3 hours of testimony this time around. So I'll try not to pause it too often so that we can get through the testimony without having to take too many breaks. But I'll do my best. But as always, trigger warnings for all the things, all kinds of abuse, all kinds of violence, and things like that. So for anyone that has a hard time with that, just know that stuff is probably going to be coming up in this stream. I got a little bit of a few things here and there that they were talking about, but just briefly as I was kind of going through and trying to make sure that we don't have any unexpected commercial breaks. But yes, all of the trigger warnings and everything, it's not worth your mental health if you're having a hard time with the testimony. So, all right, with that said, think that should be about it. Okay. Let's continue on then, shall we? All right, let's get to it.
The cross-examination of the witness. Would you state your name again for the record, please?
Erik Menendez.
I'll remind you that you're still under oath. You may continue your cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, you've testified that your mother and your brother Lyle were about the same size, correct?
No, Lyle was roughly 2 to 3 inches taller than her.
And you indicated that you believed your brother's about 5'11",
5'10", somewhere around there.
and your mother was measured at 5'2" by the coroner. Isn't that correct?
And that would be impossible.
That's impossible?
I'm sorry?
That mistake.
All right. It's objection is sustained to the form of the question. Answer is stricken.
If the coroner had measured your mother at 62 inches, 5'2", would that be inaccurate?
Yes, it would.
Now, Mr. Menendez, you indicated, well, first of all, when you said that your mother and your brother were roughly the same size, were you trying to mislead the juries
No, I was not.
into thinking that your mother was bigger than she was,
No,
to make you more believable when you said you were scared of her?
no,
Were you exaggerating?
no, I wasn't.
Mr. Menendez, you said
These questions are kind of pointless because you know what the answer is going to be. So either he is somehow thinking that he's going to get some kind of crazy response from Erik, or he knows that he's going to be giving these kinds of responses, and the whole purpose is just to put the question in front of the jury so that they can be asking these questions about Erik's testimony.
said that when you entered into the family room on the 20th of August, you were the first one into that room, correct?
Yes, I was.
And you indicated that the first person you saw was your father.
Yes.
And you said that he was standing up.
Yes, he was.
Do you remember the testimony of your brother who followed you into that room? Is that right?
Yes, he followed me into the room.
Testified that your father was in the process of rising from the couch?
No, I
remember
don't think
that?
he said that.
You don't think he said that?
No, I don't believe so.
Would that be accurate?
No, it wouldn't.
You've indicated that you fired.
Also, I Love Pie, thank you so much for paying it forward, gifting 1 Legal Bites membership, and Ardo ended up getting it. So there you go. It's kind of just a roundabout way of doing it. Wonderful. Very kind, very generous of you. Thank you so much for paying that forward. Very, very kind. All right.
Fired at the first figure you saw?
No, I just started firing as soon as I came in the room. I don't know who I was firing at.
And at the time that you first entered that room, you saw your father first, correct?
Yes.
And you went right into the room.
Yes.
And did you fire as soon as you got through the threshold of the doors?
That's my recollection. I don't know exactly at what point I fired. I just remember firing right after I got into the room.
Is your recollection that you hit your father first?
I don't know.
As you entered into the room, you kept firing.
Yes.
And you indicated that you loaded 5 cartridges into your shotgun, is that right?
Yes, I believe it was 5.
And at first, when you put in the bird shot, you had loaded 2 cartridges, correct?
Yes.
And you thought that that was sufficient.
At first, before Saturday night, when my dad was banging on the door, and then I realized that I thought I was going to die because 2 shells, it just didn't seem enough for me right then.
So that's what you were thinking about when you loaded.
When I loaded
Your 5 cartridges.
No, on Saturday night, I was thinking, why didn't I load more? And on Sunday, I loaded all the way I could.
So that was you loaded as many as you could. You're not sure how many you loaded then?
As many as I could.
Did you hear your brother shooting as you entered? Did he shoot as soon as he came through the doors?
I just remember all sorts of noise, banging and so on. I don't remember whether the noise was coming from my gun or from his.
Now, you remember there was testimony by the autopsy surgeon that there was a contact wound to the back of your father's head, correct?
Yes.
To the back of his head.
Yes.
Did you see your brother go behind your father at any time?
No, I didn't know about that one until after I was arrested.
Where was your brother during the time that you were firing?
I assumed he was to my right. I didn't see him. All I saw was what was right in front of me in the fire.
And what was right in front of you?
The fire of the gun.
All you saw is a flame?
Yes. That's what I saw. It was the flame.
Testified
not
to
the
this in
fire.
the last installment.
And you didn't see what you were shooting at?
No. I may have at the time. I have no memory of it. I have very little memory of what happened inside there.
Why is that?
I don't know why that is.
Now, when you talked to Dr. Oziel, you told him you had vivid images of what you had done. Is that right?
I had vivid images of what I saw after, but not of what I had done.
So all you could see was the flame coming from your gun. You couldn't see where your gun was shooting.
I knew it was shooting in front of me, but I didn't know where.
This is fairly common. I would imagine that this is a traumatic experience. I mean, he says it was traumatic, and that's what it sounds like from his crying and sobbing that happened afterwards. In the time, I mean, you know, Lyle also testified that he had to like seriously calm Erik down because he was completely freaking out, just like basically losing it after this. All of that lines up with the idea that this was a traumatizing experience to Erik, even though he was the one perpetrating it, right? Even though he was the one shooting his parents. So was Lyle. This can still be a traumatic experience to the person who is doing the thing that is harming someone else. Particularly when they have a very close relationship with the person that they are harming. So, you know, the idea that he doesn't remember all of these things can be an issue. Absolutely can be an issue. It can also be completely reasonable considering the idea that there is trauma involved here. You know, that's one of the tricky things about the cases that do involve traumatic experiences. So, you know, the idea that he doesn't remember everything, he says he doesn't remember everything. He, you know, everything except for the flash of his muzzle has been blacked out from this particular experience. Like, it's certainly possible. Certainly possible. I wonder if we're going to hear from an expert on that in this trial. I don't know. I mean, folks that have seen this trial a number of times might be in the chat. Let us know. But that it would be very curious.
What was in front of you?
My parents.
Now, your father had the contact wound to the back of his head, and you don't remember looking and seeing your brother behind your father?
No, I don't believe he was behind my father.
Were you concerned about maybe hitting your brother by accident?
If he was behind my father, I might have.
Because you were shooting in that direction?
I was just shooting in front of me. If my brother was behind the couch, I would have hit him. I really didn't know what I was firing at. I was just firing right in front of me.
Did you keep your gun in one position, or were you just panning and firing as soon as you could pump that shotgun and pull that trigger?
I don't know.
Did you keep your shotgun stationary and shoot just in one position?
I don't remember. I know I ended up in a different position than when I entered the door, but I don't know what happened with the gun while it was firing.
Besides the contact wound to the back of your father's head, there was a testimony about your father having a wound to his right shoulder, which fractured his arm. Remember that?
No, I don't.
Do you remember that shot taking place that night?
If it happened, it must have happened.
And your father also sustained a wound to his right forearm. Do you remember that shot?
No.
And a wound to his left elbow, which was back to front, from the rear to the front. Do you remember that shot?
No, I don't.
Do you remember the shot to his left thigh? The entrance wound would have been to his inside of his thigh, and the exit wound on the outside of his thigh. Do you remember that?
That I remember seeing afterwards.
When did you see that?
When I was picking up the shells or when I went back in the room, I don't remember, but that I remember.
You remember that specifically?
Yeah.
You remember your brother testifying that as he shot at your father fell back into the sofa, into the couch,
No, I don't remember.
into a seated position?
I don't know.
Now, you were in there at the same time firing your guns, correct?
Yes.
Why is it that your brother could see your father fall back into the couch and you couldn't see anything?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustain.
Yeah. He's literally asking
You
him
saw
to
what you were
speculate.
doing that day. You saw you were shooting at your mother, correct?
I apparently not. You're telling me I didn't.
I'm not telling you anything. I'm asking you what you did.
You're telling me that a shot came from my direction at my dad, and it may have. I don't know. I don't know what happened inside the room. I must have shot my mother, and I guess I shot my dad too. I just don't know.
So you could have shot your father.
Yes.
Now, you said that you had 5 shells in your gun, correct?
Yes.
And there were 5 wounds or 6 areas of wounding to your father and 10 to your mother, correct?
Yes.
Now, was there a preconceived plan on which of you would shoot at your mother and which would shoot at your father?
No.
Why is it that you didn't take the first person you saw and have your brother go on to your mother? Why is it that you went off to the left into the room where you would shoot your mother?
Object to the form of the question, Your Honor.
Overruled.
I guess because I got to the door first, I just ran in. We didn't know where exactly my parents were going to be in the room. We thought they were doing something in the room, and I didn't know where they'd be.
Isn't it true that you looked into that room before you entered?
The door was closed.
You cracked that door open to see where your parents were before you entered?
No.
Now, your mother had a wound to her right cheek and nose. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
And to her right jaw and her right collarbone, and her teeth were broken out. Remember that?
I remember him saying that.
She also had a wound to her left ear and neck and left shoulder,
I don't remember him saying that.
and to her right arm, which fractured her arm and forearm. You remember that?
No.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this question. It's not clear that he's asking him to remember.
All right, are you referring to the coroner's testimony or the events that night?
The events that night.
Well,
All right, then rephrase the question.
Do you remember shooting your mother in the left side of her chest?
No.
Do you remember shooting your mother in her left hip and thigh area?
No.
Mr. Menendez, when you were shooting your mother, did she simply stand in front of you and take all the shots that you were administering to her?
object to the form of the question, Your Honor. There's no proof he shot his mother.
Overruled.
I didn't hear the question.
I asked you, sir, whether your mother simply stood in front of you and took all the shotgun blasts that you were giving to her.
I don't know.
You have no idea what she was doing.
I didn't see her. As soon as I entered the room, I saw her, but as soon as I started firing, I didn't see anyone.
He's
I
consistent.
didn't.
How could that be?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Objection argumentative.
Overruled.
I guess because the room
Trying
was
everything
dark
she can.
and because there was so much noise and there was so much fire that, and maybe because I don't want to remember. I don't know why, but I don't remember.
Okay, you remember things, I believe you testified, you remember from when you were 3 years old. You've given these juries a lot of the things that happened when you were 3 years old and on later in your life. Remember that?
Form of the question, Your Honor. This states the testimony.
Overruled.
I remember a lot more things. I mean, a lot less things than I remember. A lot more things happened to me in my life than I will ever remember. But what happened that night, when I entered that room, I don't remember.
This is a night that you,
And look, from the state's perspective, this is a perfectly legitimate line of questioning, right? I mean, if he's stating he doesn't remember, the state could be saying, look, that's very convenient because that's, you guys were the only ones in the room. And so how do you suddenly not have the ability to testify on the most crucial part of all of this testimony and all of this trial, right? Like how is that possible? So in terms of like, is it fair game? Absolutely. Is it convincing? To me personally, no. I see folks in the chat that are saying no. There might be others, however, who are actually looking at that and saying, yeah, actually, I see that as a problem for the defense. I don't know. I just wanted to point that out.
that you'll never forget. Isn't that true, sir?
Yes.
And this is a night that you had images of, and you described for Dr. Oziel that you were having nightmares about you and your brother killing your parents, correct?
I had images of it every day.
So why don't you explain to the juries what you saw that night then?
Objection, Your Honor. Ask the
Yeah,
answer.
yeah.
Overruled.
I entered the room. I saw two people in the room, and I just started firing. And that's what I remember.
Let's take it step by step, though, so the jurors can understand what
Your Honor,
happened.
object. It's not a question.
All right, just ask the question rather than the preface.
Mr. Menendez, why don't you try to focus on what you saw that night and describe that to the jury?
Objection, Your Honor. Ask and answer.
Overruled.
At what point that night?
As you entered and you started to shoot, you see your parents in front of the couch. What did you see?
I saw my dad on this side of the coffee table coming forward. I saw my mom on the other side, and then I saw the smoke and the fire of my gun.
Now, let's take one shot at a time then, sir. The initial fire from the gun and the initial smoke didn't cover the whole room, did it?
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
When I walked in the room, I was panicking, and I just fired every shot I had. I didn't stop to take a look at what I was doing after each shot. I just fired until there was nothing left. And what happened in between when I first started firing, when I ended, is just a red blank to me.
You had never shot that shotgun before, had you?
No.
And you had to pull that trigger and you had to pump that pump shotgun before you fired the second shot, correct?
Yes.
You had to think about what you were doing, didn't you?
No.
You didn't have to think about that, even though you had never shot a shotgun before?
No, I wasn't thinking about what I was doing. It doesn't, I don't know how many times it takes, how long it takes to fire off 5 rounds, but I don't know.
You had never shot a shotgun before, is that right?
No.
This is the first time you had ever shot a shotgun.
Yes.
And you pulled the trigger the first time and it blasted. You heard that blast.
Yes.
Did you see where it went?
No.
Where the shot went?
No.
And then you had to do what? Pump your shotgun?
I suppose I would have had to. I don't remember doing it.
And then do what?
And then I would have had to fire again. And I would have had to keep on doing that until all of the bullets were left, assuming I stopped when the bullets were left. I don't know if I fired more than that. I just don't remember.
Do you know what position your gun was when you first fired it?
I don't know. I assume it was in front of me.
Was it at your hip? Did you have it up at your shoulder? Where did you have it?
I guess I had it at my side. I really don't remember. I don't remember these things.
And your mother was hit also in the left hip and thigh, and the left lower leg, and the left calf. Now,
Objection, not a question.
All right, let's
Is that-
ask a question, please.
Mr. Menendez, You heard the testimony of the autopsy surgeon that your mother was shot in the left lower leg and the left calf, correct? Correct?
I don't remember that.
At any time, did you realize that your mother had fallen to the floor in front of the couch, between the couch and the coffee table?
No. You need to understand this happened in such a rush, so quickly, that it was over within seconds, 3 seconds. And
Were you timing this, sir?
no, I wasn't. But
How do you know what?
it just happened so fast. Before I knew it, it was over. I was standing there and it was over. And I don't remember what happened in between.
Sir, are you saying that in 3 seconds, you and your brother could inflict 10 shotgun wounds on your mother and 6 on your father in 3 seconds? Is that what you're saying?
It's what it seemed like to me. Maybe it was 4, maybe it was 2, but it was.
Maybe it was 2 seconds?
It just happened so quickly that I don't have a memory of these individual shots. I just don't. I don't want to have a memory. And I may have had a memory the night after or the night after that. I don't remember having those memories, but I know I was so haunted that that I just couldn't deal with the memories. And I don't know.
So it's not that you didn't.
This is consistent with the idea that the brain does often, not often, but sometimes will do this with, particularly with traumatic experiences, to protect itself from emotional harm. The brain does this. It's very malleable. We've talked about this before on this channel, but from what he's saying, this lines up with someone whose memory has gone vacant to a particular event due to the emotional trauma of it.
See what was happening. You just don't want to remember. Is that right? You had stated that it was too dark.
Yes, let's have one question at a time.
Question is then, sir, you saw what was happening and you can remember what was happening, but you don't want to testify here as to what was happening.
No, that's not true. If I remembered, I would have to testify here. But I don't remember. I don't remember ever having the memories. But I know that the memories were so awful that I've forgotten a lot of what happened.
Have you thought about that over the last 4 years, about what happened that night?
Every day.
Have you tried to jog your memory as to what happened when you and your brother entered into that room and surprised your parents? Have you thought about that?
No.
Overruled.
I definitely have not tried to jog my memory. I've tried to forget. I've worked a lot in therapy and taken a lot of medication so I could forget because I don't want to remember. And I definitely have not tried to remember.
Does that therapy and medication make you forget about all the other things that you've experienced? Or you have a good memory of everything else?
I really don't have a good memory of everything else. So many things happened to me that I don't remember. But about that night, I don't remember.
The things you've testified to, is that a figment of your imagination then in this trial?
No.
Is that based on things that you would like to have had happen that you could testify to?
I definitely would rather that the things that happened to me had not happened. That's
Well,
for sure.
This therapy, you say, and this medication you're on, that makes you forget about this night that you went in there and shot your parents. What effect does that have on the other things you've testified about?
The therapy and the medication doesn't make me forget. The medication allows me to deal with it, allows me to talk here today, but the therapy helps me deal with these things.
That's a good answer.
Nothing in therapy wants me to forget things.
Okay.
That's a good answer because that's he did open himself up to that question as distasteful as it is, if you, particularly if you are seeing this from the defense perspective, right? I mean, so there are quite a few of us watching this, you know, myself included, folks in the chat, folks on replay, who have been watching this trial and believe that they were abused, and believe, you know, the accounts by the defense at this point. But, you know, he did open himself up by saying, you know, therapy and medicine is like what I turned to so that I could forget it. The question then becomes, has he forgotten it because of those things, and how reliable is his memory about all of the other stuff that he's testified to? That is, even though it's an aggressive question, this is cross-examination after all, it is a legitimate question, but his answer was really good, that he says, no, I mean, that's why I turned to it, but that's not the effect that it had. It's helping me manage those memories. It's helping me manage all of the feelings and the thoughts that I have as a result of all of these experiences. So that's a good answer. As much as Leslie was objecting, because of the aggressiveness of the question and all that kind of stuff, he answered very well for himself on that point. That was a potentially treacherous area for him to be in, that I think that he navigated fairly well.
Maybe I was mistaken. I thought you testified that the therapy and medication helps you to forget that night. Is that what you testified
If
to?
I said that, I misspoke. It's not right now.
So the therapy and medication are not impeding your memory with respect to that night.
No, they're definitely not impeding it. No.
That's something that you just want to do.
I'm sorry.
That's something that you want to do.
What is?
Forget about what happened that night.
Yes, I'd like to completely forget about it.
But we can't do that. We have to have testimony with respect to what you did that night. So you try to think about what happened that night.
Objection, is that question?
All right. If it is a question, what is your answer?
I know I have to remember, and I don't remember. My attorneys ask me over and over, and I don't remember. I just don't remember what happened when I walked in the room, and there's nothing more that I can tell you.
Do you remember shooting and missing your parents? There were 2 shots that went into the French doors behind your parents. You remember that?
No,
This was asked and answered 2 days ago.
Objection overruled.
no, I don't.
Do you have any idea how your mother sustained 10 wounds and your father 6 areas of wounds if you only had 5 cartridges in your shotgun?
No, I don't.
You don't know how that could have happened?
No.
At some point, did you go to where your mother was lying between the sofa and the coffee table
No.
and shoot her there?
No, I didn't.
Couple questions here really quick. Culperistic says, is this stuff the prosecutor should be arguing at closing to the jury and not what you should try to get the witness to admit to? It feels unlikely he's going to get the answer he wants from the witness. So that's a strategy question, because on the one hand, it slows down the testimony, right? It slows down the whole conversation. And this cross-examination has definitely dragged on. Without question, it has absolutely dragged on. Part of that is because it seems like Kuriyama is not listening or hasn't been listening to the testimony throughout trial. Another, part of that is, maybe strategy wise, he's just trying to wear Erik down. On the other hand, sometimes the value in asking a question is asking the question regardless of what the answer is going to be, because it's just putting that question in the minds of the jurors and moving on. The problem with that here is that it can also get lost in all of the fluff, right? Because he's been going on for so long now. I think this is the beginning of a new day, right? We see Erik wearing a new color, a new outfit. So this probably is a new day. So that this means that the jury is probably fairly fresh. But I think that the way that this cross-examination was picked up also was sort of in the middle of things and very quickly just went into the weeds again. So here at this point, we are we're 20 minutes into today's cross-examination. Any sort of like poignant questions that are intended just to have the jury think about the question, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, obviously we can't see the jury here. That would have been improper for the cameras to be on the jury for a number of reasons. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. My personal take here, and every every lawyer has their own style. Every litigator has their own style. You guys know, for me, a good cross-examination is quick, it's precise, it is, done with a scalpel instead of a machete. So you want to get in, get your points, get out before any blood has been drawn from you, or from your side. And that's obviously not happening here in general. Sometimes it is better to reserve some points for cross-examination, or not cross-examination, sorry, for closing, because you're going to get stuck in quicksand. And that does feel like what's happening here. Let's see. There's also another question or two. Nico Kiski says, question, in an episode of Lyle's Cross, I noticed he said a new munition instead of ammunition. What should the court clerk write in such cases? What the witness said or what they intended to say? What the witness actually said. Yeah. The stenographer and by the way, the court reporter, the stenographer, the person who is taking down the transcript of the trial, it's often the case if you talk to a court reporter when they do depositions, when they do hearings, when they do trials, at the end of the day, when they walk out of the courtroom, it's often the case they'll tell you that they have no idea what the case was about, or maybe not no idea, but like they a lot of the details they miss because they're so focused on taking down the record of what they're hearing exactly as it is, that they may not necessarily be tracking the ins and outs of what was happening during the day, because they just their brain is being so focused on one particular task and very, very focusedly. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the word. I'm having a brain fart, but you know what I mean. So yeah. So basically, all of that is to say, the court reporter should be taking down what actually has been said. Okay, let's see. Are there other questions here? Let's see. Eric's clothes, they do look a little bit festive, right? Especially like with me wearing green. It is kind of silly. Okay. Okay. All right, cool. Let's continue.
Do you have any idea how many shotgun shells your brother had in his gun?
No, I do not.
Now take a look would you take a look at the lower right-hand corner, the photograph? I believe it's exhibit 95. It shows a photograph of your father's legs, and then your mother is lying down.
Okay. Also, revisiting gruesome photos. So, like before, I'm gonna censor ahead of time and not show them because it's not worth the existence of my channel. All of this, of course, is on Court TV's website. So if folks absolutely have to see it, most people probably don't. I'm not willing to show it on my channel. So just so you guys know, if and when they do show those gruesome photos, might be coming up in a minute. I'm going to be showing just me and the Indy cam, which right now is just an empty chair because Indy's on the floor.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now there are some wounds on her leg. Isn't that right? And the coroner testified about the wounds on her leg.
Yes.
Now, with respect to the left lower leg, there was a graze wound about 10 inches above the left heel, the coroner testified. And it was a front to back wound, and it was an upward direction. Do you remember?
Question, Your Honor?
Do you remember that testimony?
No, I don't.
Can you explain for these juries how your mother could have gotten a wound on her lower left leg in an upward direction if you were shooting on the other side of the coffee table at her?
Yeah.
I have no idea how she got any of the wounds. I really don't have any idea. There were shots from my brother and from me all over the place, and I have no idea how any of the wounds happened.
Now, when you say there were shots from you and your brother all over the place, did you move around so that the coffee table could not or would not impede your shots?
I remember ending up between the TV and the coffee table, but I guess I was firing from the door to there, but I don't understand your question by move around.
Question is, after your mother suffered the initial shotgun blasts and fell to the ground, did you go over and shoot her more while she lay there?
No,
You did not.
I definitely did not do that.
Now, if your father had the wounds that the coroner had testified to, he would not have had any more ammunition to fire at your mother on the ground.
Your
Isn't that
Honor,
right?
This is argument.
It's not the proper question as phrased.
Do you have any
Well, Your
idea?
Honor, I object to this line as calling for an expertise that my client doesn't have.
Objection overruled as to the question has been asked, Jeff.
Mr. Menendez, at any time, did you go closer to your mother so that you'd have a clear shot of her between the coffee table and the sofa?
No,
Was the coffee table always in front of you as you shot at your mother?
yes,
Did you have to shoot?
I mean, we can probably kind of figure what the answers are going to be to these questions because of the fact that he's testified that he has such limited recollection of this particular scene. So anyway,
Over the coffee table,
I assume.
you assume.
Yeah,
After you initially entered into the room and stopped, as you said, in front of the television set, is that right?
hmm
Did you just stay right there and continue firing?
I don't know.
You don't know what you did.
I don't know what I was doing when I was firing. I know where I ended up, and that's between the coffee table and the TV. What I did in between, I don't know.
It could be then that you went and you shot your mother as she lay between the coffee table and the sofa. You just don't remember that.
I doubt that could be.
Why is
But
that?
I don't remember that. But you asking me if I ran all the way to the coffee table and then all the way back around the room? That didn't happen.
So you remember exactly what you did.
No,
Mistakes.
Rephrase the question.
You do remember things that you did then.
no, I don't. I can tell you that I'm sure that I didn't run around the room. I'm sure that I just ran from the door straight in front of the coffee table. But I just don't remember.
You know that you weren't wasting time by running around the room. You went directly to where you could do the most damage. Wouldn't that be fair?
Argumentative.
Overruled.
No, I wasn't thinking like that. I ran in that room in such a state that I just wanted to fire off that gun as fast as possible. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know where I was going to shoot or how I was going to shoot or any of that. This wasn't going through my mind.
Okay, Mr. Menendez, when you went in there, you said all you wanted to do is shoot your gun, correct?
Yes.
You didn't take your gun and fire your 5 shots into the ceiling, did you?
No, I didn't.
You knew you wanted to kill your parents. Isn't that right?
I wanted to shoot at them, yes.
You wanted to what?
I wanted to shoot at them.
And that was your goal as you entered into that room that night.
The last thought I have of entering the room was the fear that one of them was going to be able to take my gun. I assume that was the goal if I ran in there to shoot them, but I don't have a specific memory of the goal. I don't have a specific memory of what I did when I was inside the room. I just don't have it.
Sir, you were inside your house. You got your gun. You were armed. You ran down the stairs. You ran past the family room. You ran out the foyer, outside of your house. You went to your car, correct?
Yes.
You loaded your gun as much as you could,
Yes.
and you were scared that someone was going to take your gun away from you as you entered that door.
Yes, that was the last thought I had. You need to understand who my parents are and how strong they are, especially how quick my dad is. And this was a small room and this was a big gun. And it just flashed through my mind. All kinds of things flashed through my mind. I didn't think about these thoughts. These are just thoughts that flashed through my mind. I didn't think about what my goal was. I was just acting. And from as soon as what happened in the foyer, I panicked and I just burst into that room and I started firing as much as I could, but I can't tell you what happened inside the room.
So when those doors closed to the family room and your father said he was going to finish watching television,
He didn't say that.
you went upstairs and you did all these purposeful movements, all these purposeful actions in order to catch them by surprise.
They thought I was waiting up in my room for my dad to come up and have sex with me. That's what I'm sure they were thinking. And that's what they were about to do. And I just thought, I just panicked. I
So
thought
you
I was
were-
going to die. And I ran and I loaded as much as I could.
Now, let's try to clarify that. You thought your father was going to come up and have sex with you.
Yes.
You didn't think he was going to come and kill you.
No, I definitely thought he was going to come and kill me. He just
Thought-
wasn't going to do that in front of the family with everyone knowing and my mom knowing right there and my brother knowing right there. That wasn't going to happen.
What wasn't going to happen?
Him just coming up to my room to do that in front of everyone.
So you went out, and when you were outside and you had a loaded gun, you decided, I've got to go back in there, but I'm afraid that they might take my gun away from me as I enter into that room.
That
Right,
thought
wrong direction.
went through my mind right before I ran into the room. And as I was out of the car.
And your brother had a loaded gun right behind you.
Yes.
And it was a fully loaded pump shotgun.
Yes.
And you had your backup with you.
Yes.
Do you remember the testimony of Diane Vandermolen? I believe it was in 1983. Testified that you and your brother tied her up and tried to take her clothes off. Remember that testimony?
Yes.
Were you acting in self-defense there too?
No, we were goofing around.
You were acting with. You were acting.
Approach on this issue, Your Honor.
No.
You were acting in concert with your brother then too, weren't you?
Objected for the question.
That was some goofing around that I did with my cousin when I was 10 years old.
In 1983, you were 13 years old, weren't you? You were born
Did
in
you say
1970.
83? All right, then I was 11 years old. But this wasn't something that I was acting in self-defense with, no.
Oh boy. Definitely feels unrelated. If you're on team prosecution at this point, I don't know. Maybe it feels justified. If you're on team defense, probably not. um, yeah, it feels like a low blow. It does, because that seems a bit unrelated. I don't know.
Something you and your brother did together.
Yes.
And he was with you on this night too.
Yes, he was.
And are you saying that there was no discussion whatsoever about which one of you would shoot which parent?
Asked and answered.
We didn't know where my parents were in the room. We thought my parents were coming out. We thought they had guns. We weren't thinking my mom's here, my dad's here. You do this, you do that. That did not even cross my mind.
Mr. Menendez.
Certainly was no discussion about it.
Yeah, this is I mean, I know folks in the chat have been saying this for a bit, that this is like they've gone over this testimony again and again and again. And yes, it is difficult for Erik to be sitting through this. At the same time, it also feels like it's been, when it feels repetitive to the viewer, remember it probably feels repetitive to the jury as well. So I don't know how effective any of this really is for the prosecution.
Mr. Menendez, your brother testified, or you testified that your brother had been into the room where they were watching TV. So there was no speculation as to what they were doing in that room, was there? You knew what they were doing in the room.
Rephrase the question.
You had testified that your brother was in the family room just minutes before you burst in there with your brother to kill them. And they were watching television, weren't they?
No, they weren't. No, they weren't.
You told these juries that you never, in 4 years, you never asked your brother about that. So how can you testify that they weren't?
My brother and I,
Objection argumentative, Your Honor, and
Raise the question, please.
Sir, didn't you testify that in the past 4 years, you never asked your brother what he saw in that room prior to you and your brother bursting into that room?
my brother and I didn't have discussions about what happened that night. We didn't. I never talked to him really about it. Maybe a week later, I told him I was having trouble dealing with it and so on. But I certainly never had discussions about what was happening inside that room when he walked in, or what happened after we started firing, or anything like that.
Sir,
We just didn't want to talk about that.
Sir, you were out on the streets for 7 months before you were arrested on this case. So you mean to say that you never talked about that in those 7 months that you were on the streets?
argumentative.
We talked about a lot of things, and we talked about the fear we had that weekend, but we definitely didn't talk about what happened inside that room. It's not something that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to forget it. I wanted not to do it because it was coming back to me. I mean, at everything that I was doing during the day, it was right there in front of me. I could smell the smoke. I could hear the fire, and I just didn't want to deal with it.
Now, in the 3.5 years that you've been in custody with your brother, you've been in the cell right next door to him for months at a time. Isn't that correct, sir?
No, I was with him, next to him for about 2 months, and ever since then, they've kept us in separate parts of the jail.
Now, you were next to him in 7,000, that module?
No, I was not in the cell next to him.
Which module were you in when you were next to your brother?
In 3100 and 19.
And you never talked about what happened that night with him during that period of time, did you?
Once we entered the room, never.
This is getting to did they line up their testimony because they were in jail cells that were right next to each other, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what he's getting at there with that particular line of questioning is A, did you guys plan things out ahead of time? And B, did you talk about it afterwards to line up your testimony?
And in fact, you and your brother are taken from this courthouse to the men's central jail in a van, correct?
Yes, we are.
And you're the only two inmates on that van.
No, there's 2 deputies sitting right in front of us driving us.
Okay, you ever talk on the bus?
Not if we don't want the deputies to hear us.
Are you seated right next to the deputies?
We're separated on the van. There's a metal sheet in between us. Lyle is separated, put right in front of the deputy, right behind the deputies, directly behind him, and I'm put behind the metal sheet.
Are you saying that over the past 4 years, you never asked him what he saw in that room?
I don't want to know what he saw in that room. I don't want to know. I don't want to deal with it. It's something that I will never forget. It's something that I will always have with me, and I don't want to know. I certainly never asked him.
Now, what you did that night had been planned for some time, hadn't it?
No, it hadn't.
Do you remember seeing a movie about 3 weeks before the killings?
No.
A movie on the Billionaire Boys Club, sir?
No, I never saw that movie.
You know anything about that movie?
Yes, I know a lot about the actual case. I don't know a lot about the movie, but I know a lot about the actual case.
And there was a father.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. May we approach at this point?
Yes.
Mr. Menendez, with respect to this BBC movie,
So this was a movie that was basic. I can't remember. Folks in the chat knew, but basically this was like a movie that was based off of something that actually happened, where some wealthy kids killed their parents for the money. This is where the prosecution thinks that they got this idea to kill their parents, and that they watched it and whatnot. But the problem here is that he's just testified that he's never seen it. He's familiar with it, but was he familiar with it prior to the killings? I don't think that he answered that specific question. I don't think that was specifically asked, but is he familiar with it now? I mean, sure he is, because I'm sure it's come up in discovery for this case. And so he probably asked his attorneys. If he wasn't already familiar, he would have asked his attorneys, what is that? What are we talking about? What are we doing here? I don't know. And so here's one point. Your Everyday Sheep says Erik knows about the BBC as he was friends with one of the members' brothers in high school. The parent who died in the case actually died accidentally. The cases are not similar at all. Fair point. But also there is a question here. Flashfan85 says, I read somewhere that they filed appeals against Judge Weisberg being biased. It got denied. Any reason why that would not work? I will say that is really, really, really hard to prove, particularly when it comes to most of the decisions that the judge makes here, which is like evidentiary decisions. Usually, I mean, that is discretionary. So it's up to the judge's discretion to determine whether or not an objection is sustained or overruled. And so because of that, on appeal, it's given a lot of weight. The original decision is given a lot of weight. It has to be an abuse of discretion in order to win an appeal on that issue. And then on top of that, it has to be the kind of decision that would have altered the outcome of the case. Again, super, super high burden on any of these appeals. Very, very high burden to overturn any kind of a verdict like this. Okay, let's continue. Okay, continue.
You recall that Dr. Oziel testified that you had indicated that you had seen this movie on the BBC.
Rephrase the question, please.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that you had seen this movie on the BBC?
What movie?
Objection overruled.
The Billionaire Boys Club movie.
Dr. O'Deal didn't testify to that.
Do you remember telling him about what you called the BBC movie?
No.
Do you know what the BBC is?
Yeah, he said that I saw a movie on the BBC, and I never said that.
You never told him that?
No, I definitely never told him that.
Did you ever see that movie?
Which movie?
The Billionaire Boys Club movie, sir.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, he already said.
Never seen it.
No, I never saw the movie.
Did Dr. Oziel make up some initials like that and say that you told him that you had seen the movie on the BBC?
I could believe it.
Which movie are you referring to? A movie that Dr. Oziel says I saw, or this Billionaire Boys Club movie?
I think one in the
You
same.
realize that that's the same movie, don't you, sir?
No, it isn't.
Overruled.
It isn't. Okay, why don't you tell us what it is?
Dr. Oziel, and I read it very carefully because I wanted to know what he was going to testify in court, said that I saw a movie on the BBC or a movie on the BBC special. And then when I heard you bring up the Billionaire Boys Club movie in court, you were linking them together, but that's not what he was saying.
What were you referring to when you said the BBC movie?
I never said a BBC movie.
Well, how do you know what Dr. Oziel was referring to if you don't know what he was talking about, sir?
Because he said a movie on the BBC, and clearly he's talking about on the British Broadcasting.
Now, you've used that term yourself, haven't you, sir?
BBC?
Yes.
Yes.
What did you refer to it
Your Honor,
as?
I'm going to object at this point in time.
Overruled.
Well, Your Honor, I'd object right now.
Overruled.
Sir, what did you refer to it as?
When I was having a conversation with Craig Signorelli,
Your Honor, I'm going to renew my objection.
Overruled.
he said something about BBC, and I said, yeah, like the BBC.
Now, were you talking about the British Broadcasting Company, sir?
When I was talking to Craig, no.
Yes. What were you referring to?
I was referring to the case of the Billionaire Boys Club.
So you knew that BBC stood for the Billionaire Boys Club, correct?
Those are the initials of BBC, yes.
And when you told Dr. Oziel that you had seen a movie on the BBC, you knew exactly what you were talking about. You knew it was a Billionaire Boys Club. Isn't that correct, sir?
I never told Dr. Oziel that.
Now, why is it that you think now, if you never told him that, why is it that you think he was not referring to the Billionaire Boys Club, sir?
Because if he says that I told him about this movie that you're referring to, I wouldn't have called it the BBC. I would have said the name of the movie. That's not what he said. He said that I said a movie on the BBC.
When Craig Signorelli mentioned the BBC, did you say, no, Craig, I'm talking about the British Broadcasting Company? Is that what you said?
No.
Your Honor, I'm going to object again on this subject matter with regard to conversation
Right.
with Mr. Signorelli.
Objection overruled.
Sir,
Yes, you've got me confused. Which conversation are you
when
now
Mr.
referring to?
Signorelli
I think we're all confused.
mentioned the BBC, you knew exactly what he was talking about,
What
correct?
date is it that?
This is
that conversation
November
occurred?
29th, 1989.
Yes, I knew what he was talking about.
And you didn't correct him and say, no, that's the Billionaire Boys Club. You knew exactly what he was talking about,
Yes.
correct?
Mhm.
And you were thinking about forming your own corporation at that time, correct?
Your Honor, I'm going to object again.
Sustained.
Did you at
Yeah. So credibility issues can have a very big impact, especially at a time like this where Erik's testimony has been pitted directly against Dr. Oziel's testimony. If you think Dr. Oziel is completely full of shit, like, it's not going to be helpful to the state to be pitting that testimony directly against the defendant.
at any time during your sessions with Dr. Oziel ever mention this movie on the BBC?
Objection, Your Honor. 10:16.
Right, rephrase the question, please.
With respect to those sessions on October 31st, 1989 and November 2nd, 1989, did you ever mention seeing the BBC movie and talking to Dr. Oziel about how the father in that movie reminded you of yours?
No,
You never mentioned that at all.
I never said that to him.
Was there ever any conversation when your brother was present at either of those two sessions that we've just related where that was discussed?
It could not have been discussed when Lyle was there. It certainly wouldn't have been discussed there because in that conversation, we were specifically not talking about things that happened before.
Sir, would it be fair to say then that you had disclosed a lot of things to Dr. Oziel before your brother shut you up?
Yeah, I talked about a lot about what happened in terms of where we bought the guns and what happened after my parents died and so on.
And you also had a discussion with him about your brother and you planning the killings, correct? Before your brother got there.
No, that's not true.
Now, you indicated that after your brother arrived, you understood him to be quite upset with you. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, he was.
Now, you heard your brother testify that you and he had conversations about your mother and father deciding between themselves and among themselves that they would be the ones to kill you and your brother because it would be less of a risk, because they would be the ones to actually do the killing. Remember that?
Your Honor, I think my question is
Well, do you understand the question?
No, I don't know what you're
Let's
saying.
rephrase it, please.
Do you remember your brother testifying that he and you discussed whether your mother and father would kill themselves or get somebody to kill for them? Remember that?
Would kill themselves?
Would kill you to themselves or hire somebody else.
When are you asking that we had this conversation?
Did you have that conversation?
I think at one point during that week, maybe Thursday or something, we may have had some sort of conversation like that, but I don't remember.
Isn't
I
it
certainly
true?
didn't think that someone else was going to hire, they were going to hire someone else to kill us until my mom mentioned that the fishing boat trip had changed, and then I thought it was a possibility.
Isn't it true that the two of you discussed how it would be a lot safer for the two of you to kill your parents so that no one else would know? You would only have to rely on the two of you. You could hold the secret. Did you ever discuss that?
No,
That hasn't been testified.
I'm
to.
not clear what you're saying.
Well, let's go a step further. When you went to Dr. Oziel on October 31st, 1989, and you disclosed what you and your brother had done as far as planning out the killings and watching the BBC movie, when your brother arrived, he realized that now it wasn't the perfect murder. Now somebody else knew. And the risk was only between you two.
objection, Your Honor. Comes down to argumentative, cost of speculation.
rephrase the question?
Yeah.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
There's a lot of issues with that.
Mr. Menendez, did you discuss doing the killing yourselves, you and your brother?
No,
Never discussed that?
no. You mean before my parents died, Lyle and I had a discussion that we're going to kill our parents ourselves?
Yes.
No, that never happened.
Was there any discussion about it would be safe because it would only be the two of you? You wouldn't have to rely on somebody else who might tell the police what you did?
You mean hire somebody else?
Yes.
No, we certainly never had any conversations like that.
So it was always the plan that you two would do the killings?
No.
Now, when you went into Dr. Oziel's office on the 31st of October, and as you indicated, you were depressed and you felt bad about what you had done, and you had spent about an hour and a half with him, and you told him what you did, you told him how it was all planned out. Then when your brother got there, he was upset, wasn't he?
Objection, Your Honor, confound.
Overruled.
I didn't go to Dr. Oziel to tell him. I went to Dr. Oziel because I was ready to kill myself and because my cousin Henry said, I don't feel comfortable with you feeling like this. I want you to get some therapy or some help. That's why I went to Dr. Oziel. When he wasn't understanding why I wanted to kill myself and why I had so much grief over my parents dying, that's when I realized I had to tell him. But there certainly was never a conversation with him about the BBC movie that you're referring to or planning. And that's when Lyle got to the session, he had no idea what I told Dr. Oziel anyway.
Now, Mr. Menendez, before your brother got there, you had been with Dr. Oziel for about an hour and a half, correct?
No, I think I had been with Dr. Oziel for close to 2.5 hours or something like that.
So you had plenty of time to explain what you and your brother had done.
We didn't get to that until after he called Lyle and told him to come over. Before that, the 2 hours were basically talking about my feelings before I ever told him that we killed our parents.
Now, your brother was upset with you for having told Dr. Oziel what you and he had done, correct?
Yes.
He was upset.
Yeah, he was definitely upset. He was frightened that Dr. Oziel would go to the police. He was upset.
At that point, did you realize that you had done something wrong you shouldn't have told Dr. Oziel?
I realized that before he got there, when Dr. Oziel didn't care about why I was there and why I was depressed, and just was basically asking me the details. And as soon as he started asking me why, right after he called Lyle, I started thinking to myself, I had made a mistake because Lyle's not going to be happy with me, and I shouldn't have told Dr. Oziel this. And I thought that before Lyle got there, though.
And now Dr. Oziel knew what you and your brother had done.
Yes.
And you told these juries that you always wanted to get caught. The 7 months that you were out free on the streets, you wanted to get caught. Yet when you told Dr. Oziel, you were afraid that he was going to go to the police so that you would get caught. And you didn't want that to happen, did you?
Objection,
No.
confound.
Overruled.
I never said that I wanted to get caught. I definitely always thought I would get caught, and a part of me wanted to get punished for this. I no longer had my parents to put me in my room and hit me. I no longer had them to do things to me that they had done all my life. And I felt guilty that they weren't able to do this. I definitely felt like that, but I definitely didn't want to go to jail.
Sorry.
Wasn't something that I had looked forward to or had wanted to do.
That's a very interesting answer, because it sounds like what he's saying is that he's been conditioned by his upbringing to always being punished for anything. And this was a huge act that he committed. So he felt psychologically like he needed to be somehow punished for it. Not that he wanted to go to prison for it. Interesting. That's an interesting, I mean, I'm restating what he just said, but I find that to be very interesting from a psychological perspective, for him to be answering with that kind of an answer.
When your brother got to the session with Dr. Oziel, he was very upset with you, wasn't he?
Yes.
And you didn't tell him exactly what you had told Dr. Oziel because you didn't want him to get mad at you. Isn't that correct?
No, Dr. Oziel was going to tell Lyle what I had told him, but Lyle cut him off and said that he didn't want to know.
So since Dr. Oziel didn't tell your brother what you had told him, Dr. Oziel, you weren't going to tell him what you told him. You were just going to say, I told him we did it, but I didn't tell him any of the details because you didn't want him mad at you, did you?
No, I actually, later that night at my house, he had asked me what I told Dr. Oziel. And I basically told him what I told Dr. Oziel.
Basically.
Yeah, I mean, I was crying at the time and I was just spurting out what I said to Dr. Oziel in a rush.
So that night, you recounted 2.5 hours that you had spent with Dr. Oziel, and you told your brother, even though he was mad that you went to Dr. Oziel in the first place, you told him every single thing that you told Dr. Oziel earlier that day. Is that right?
No, I'm talking about just that we had killed my parents and the details of exactly what we did afterwards and so on is what I told Lyle. I didn't tell him, I guess, everything. I don't remember exactly what I told him. But the first 2.5 hours were just about me and my suicide and so on. I just told Lyle that, I guess, in a sentence. I don't remember.
You didn't explain to your brother what you had told Dr. Oziel. That'd be fair to say?
Which part of what I told Dr. Oziel are you asking that I explained to Lyle? I certainly explained to Lyle some of the things I told Dr. Oziel, yes.
Okay, you explained some of the things, but you didn't tell him the detail in which you told Dr. Oziel about what you had done, what you and your brother had done.
I didn't give Dr. Oziel an enormous amount of detail.
Mr. Menendez,
I gave him very little.
how is it that Dr. Oziel had all these specific things that you had done, which have been corroborated and verified here, if you had not told him what you had done?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Sustain. Let's take a recess and then we'll resume at 11 o'clock. Don't discuss the matter with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. We'll resume at 11.
Quick break.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, drawing your attention to the October 31st, 1989 meeting or session that you had with Dr. Oziel. Is it your testimony that you never mentioned a BBC television show?
Yes.
But you indicated you are familiar with the BBC television show.
I'm aware of his existence. It's a miniseries, I believe.
And you knew about its existence before October 31st of 1989. Is that correct?
Oh, yes.
And the Billionaire Boys Club movie involved the son being involved in killing the father. Is that right?
It's about the real case. And yeah, it's about the real case.
Do you remember watching that with your brother?
No, I never watched that with my brother.
Do you remember where you were on July 31st of 1989?
I believe I was at Saddlebrook Country Club in Florida.
Is that in Tampa, Florida?
Yeah, I was down there in a training camp, both at my Aunt Marta's and there.
In fact, your brother was there also on that day, wasn't he?
I'm not sure if he was there at that time or on time the week before that I was there. I know he was there one of those times.
Do you remember telling Dr. Oziel that after watching this movie with your brother, that you and your brother had a discussion about doing away with the controlling influence in your life, the person that dominated you and trapped you and prevented you from doing what you wanted to do? Did you discuss that with your brother?
Did I discuss that with my brother?
Yes.
Or,
The killing of your father after watching
are you
this
saying on the
movie.
31st or?
Sometime after the 31st of July, yes. After watching this movie.
Oh, we didn't watch the movie, but we had talked about, on Tuesday we talked, on Friday we talked about a lot about what the family was like now and about mom and dad's relationship and how things changed.
The question I asked, though, did you talk about, after this movie, did you talk about getting rid of the controlling influence in your life, the person that dominated you and prevented you from doing what you wanted to do? Did you have that discussion with your brother?
I don't use those words. Those are words that Dr. Oziel uses. But I may have had, we had conversations about the family.
And about the family, your father was a controller of you. Is that fair to
Yes,
say?
yes. We were talking about how Dad's ideas for what he wanted for us were now beginning to change and cut off, and how Mom had really changed a lot. We were talking about a lot of different things.
Now, when you said your father's plans for you, something about getting cut off, what did you mean by that?
It means that he was cutting off the tennis, although he hadn't decided if he was cutting off the tennis, but that he wanted me now to go more into law and business schools and go on into business with him and so on.
And as you testified in direct examination, your father really controlled your life.
Yes,
Correct.
completely.
And he was going to decide what you would do as far as your career,
Yes, he would.
where you would live
Yes,
afterwards, this compound on an island in Florida.
yes,
And he would probably, as your brother testified, he would tell your brother who he could marry.
yes,
That's generic classification.
Overall.
And was really in on everything, every aspect of your lives, correct?
yes,
And you told Dr. Oziel that he was too controlling, and that after watching the movie about this young man being involved in killing his own father, his wealthy father, you discussed it with your brother that you and he would get rid of your father.
No, it was actually Dr. Oziel telling me this in that session. He was telling me what he knew about Dad. He didn't know so much about Mom, but he thought he knew a lot. And he was talking about, after I said I didn't know why, what he felt. He understood what I was saying.
Mr. Menendez, are you saying here that you simply went in and said, Lyle and I shotgunned our parents to death, but I don't know why, and stopped at that?
No, that's not at all what happened.
You testified just before we broke that you told Dr. Oziel in detail everything that happened after the killings, correct?
Objection, this states the testimony.
Overall.
Is that what you testified to?
I testified to something like that, not exactly those words.
That you told him exactly what happened after the killings, but you never mentioned what happened before the killings?
No, I mentioned that we bought shotguns in San Diego. Once he asked me, I told him that we ran into the room, and he asked me, where did we get the shotguns and why haven't the police found out? And I said that I thought they would have already because of my brother's friend's ID. But that's not why I went to the session. I didn't go to the session to tell him that I killed my parents and then not to tell him why. That's not at all what happened.
Once you went to the session and started to confess that you and your brother had committed the killings, then you started to discuss what happened before the killings. Isn't that right?
No. At that point, he asked me who knew, what did the police knew, what did people know about my brothers and my involvement, and what evidence there were, and that sort of thing. And then he got on the phone and he called Lyle.
I remember that you told Dr. Oziel that once the two of you began and you saw this plot to this BBC special that mirrored what you intended to do to your father, you simply included the plans in those plans to kill your mother because your mother would have been depressed and suicidal. And if you killed your father, she would be a potential witness. Do you remember telling Dr. Oziel that?
No, I didn't. I knew what the case of the Billionaire Boys Club was about, and the father suffocated in a trunk. It had nothing to do with what we wanted to do, and certainly this stuff about you said something about my mother being a witness, or we couldn't kill my father without that. I'm not. Could you repeat it again?
Yes, I believe you, Dr. Oziel, indicated that you had told him about this BBC special about the son being involved in killing his wealthy father, that once you saw that, you and your brother started to discuss how your father was similar to the father as depicted in that movie, and that you discussed how to get rid of your own father. Isn't that right?
Is that what he says I said? Is that what you're asking?
Right. Is that what you said?
No, that's not what I said. I also think he said I mirrored the movie. Is that what he said?
Do you remem-
I'm really unclear. If you could show me exactly what he said, I could just go down the list and tell you what I didn't say and what actually happened.
Do you remember talking to Dr. Oziel about your motivation for killing your parents?
Yeah.
And part of that motivation was to get rid of the controlling, dominating force in your life, your father, correct?
Yeah, that's what he was saying that I didn't understand. He was telling me, once I said I didn't know, and he asked me, well, when did you guys first, when did the idea first come up or something like that? He was telling me that I didn't understand. He was telling me that I wasn't very bright and that it was so confusing an issue because it had to do with all these psychological ramifications that this is why it happened, and that through therapy and hypnosis, I'll begin to understand.
Mr. Menendez, did he tell you?
Yeah, that's right. There was this whole thing. Eric testified to this previously on direct examination, I think, where he said that Dr. Oziel was like, "Listen, you don't know why you did this thing. I'm going to tell you why." But Eric said that he was like, I just let him talk because I didn't want to tell him any of the stuff about the abuse because I didn't want to tell anyone about it. So it's he's based this theory, Dr. Oziel has based this theory off of imperfect facts. And yet he seems to have been very, very convinced that that's still the correct theory.
You that you saw the Billionaire Boys Club movie? That's why you did it?
No,
tell you
that
that?
was never discussed in the session.
So when the discussion occurred about the Billionaire Boys Club movie, you knew about that movie before you ever talked to Dr. Oziel, correct?
Objection, this states the testimony.
Rephrase the question, please.
Had you known about the Billionaire Boys Club movie before you ever talked to Dr. Oziel on October 31st, 1989?
Yes, I did.
And so when he said that you spoke about the movie, he wasn't making that up, was he?
Objection, Your Honor, Dr. Oziel never spoke about that.
Objection overruled.
Dr. Oziel never testified that I saw the Billionaire Boys Club. And I don't think that he I'm really confusing the issues. That was never talked about in this session. Any movie was not brought up in this session.
Mr. Menendez, you heard Dr. Oziel testify that you had discussed seeing a movie on the BBC.
Yes.
And now you're acting as though you don't have any idea what that means. Is that right?
Objection, argumentative.
Rephrase the question.
Mr. Menendez, are you telling these juries that you have no idea what the BBC movie referred to?
Objection, Your Honor, that's also argumentative. That calls for
Overruled.
speculation.
Any answer?
BBC stands for a lot of things. One possibility is certainly the Billionaire Boys Club, but I don't believe that's what Dr. Oziel testified to, is all that I'm saying.
Was there some other movie that aired a couple weeks before the killings that had to do with the son killing his father other than the Billionaire Boys Club movie, sir?
All that I'm saying, sir, is that Dr. Oziel did not testify that I saw the BBC movie. He testified that I saw a movie on the BBC or a BBC special. This BBC movie that you're referring to is also a miniseries. It's not a movie. And that's all that I'm trying to tell you.
Which, I mean, just thinking of the language, right? You could say, I saw a movie on the BBC. It could be, I saw a movie about the BBC, about the Billionaire Boys Club. Or it could be, I saw a movie on the BBC, as in I saw a movie on the British Broadcasting Channel, that it was BBC that that broadcast a particular movie, right? Seeing it on a particular platform, on a particular channel. I don't see what the prosecution is going to be getting out of this, because he keeps coming back to beat it. And it's the same. He gets the same answer from Erik. Erik is, definitely getting frustrated at this point, understandably so. If he's trying to get him flustered, Erik is still maintaining his cool. But yeah, I don't know. I at this point, it's like, looking at this from our perspective, I would say if you are trying to say that Dr. Oziel testified to something, you better pull out a transcript of the testimony and impeach him with that. You know, if he's saying Dr. Oziel didn't testify to it and you're saying he did, then impeach him with it or move on.
How do you know that?
Because I know about the movie. I was friends with a kid whose brother was involved in it. And he used to talk about how his brother was innocent. And this was a frame up of some other thing. And I knew about the case.
You knew one of the sons of the father who was killed in the Billionaire Boys Club movie, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, I'm going to object at this point.
Overruled. Yes, we'll stay.
So with all this information and knowledge that you had about this movie, are you still saying that you didn't know what Dr. Oziel referred to when he testified about the movie on the BBC, sir?
All that I'm,
That calls for speculation and is irrelevant.
Rephrase the question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, you've testified that you knew this movie was a miniseries. You knew one of the sons of the father that was actually killed by the BBC. And are you telling these jurors that you don't know what Dr. Oziel was referring to when he said that you spoke of watching this movie on the BBC?
Your Honor,
The
it calls for my reading of
Overruled.
Dr. Oziel.
Objection overruled.
the first time that I ever thought that Dr. Oziel might be referring to this movie was when you brought it up here in court, that Dr. Oziel was referring to the Billionaire Boys Club. And you said it was a miniseries on the Billionaire Boys Club. I knew about the case from 1986 when I had watched a 60-minute program with my father. I mean, I knew about the case for years. I certainly didn't need to watch a movie to know about the case.
So that gave you the idea,
Watching a 60-minute program with my dad?
right?
No.
Now, what were you talking about when you said that you saw this plot, this movie on the BBC that you and your brother discussed? The father depicted in that movie reminded you of your own father.
I never said that. The father in the movie was, I assume you're talking about Bryant's father, and he was nothing like my father.
He was.
But I mean, I don't know what the movie portrayed the father to be, is what I'm saying. But Brian told me a lot about his own father.
Now, you knew his father was a millionaire.
His father was a,
Being objected to this calls for hearsay.
Sustain.
What is your understanding about the father, since you know about him?
All right, let's move on to something else.
Thank you.
After you and your brother planned out the killing of your mother and father and burst into the room and
Objection, facts not in evidence. I mean, they've testified there was no plan. Anyway,
did the shooting that you say you can't recall today, you and your brother emptied the shotguns, and I believe you said that after you finished firing every round in your gun, you ran out to your car, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, question is content.
Overruled.
Is that right so far?
no, you're not right so far.
Why don't you tell us what happened?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for a narrative answer.
Sustain.
After you finished emptying your shotgun, your pump shotgun, into your mother and father, what did you do?
Object to the question, it assumes facts not in evidence.
Overruled.
All right, you're saying after we killed our parents, what exactly did we do?
Yes.
We went out to the foyer, and eventually Lyle came over to me and sat down next to me.
After you finished emptying your guns, what did you do?
Lyle and I went out to the foyer, and he sat down next to me.
Isn't it true, sir, that you went out to your car and you helped your brother reload?
Oh, I thought you were talking about after that. Yes, that happened first. And then Lyle ran back in the room, and I went to the stairs, and I sat down there.
Now, are you sure that you handed your brother only one shotgun cartridge?
Your Honor, this was asked and answered.
Overruled.
Your Honor, may we approach?
No.
Let me answer, sir.
Yes, I'm fairly sure.
When you say fairly sure, Could it have been more?
I don't believe so.
So it's your understanding there was only one.
Yes.
You heard your brother testify that he went back into the room and reached over the coffee table and shot your mother in the cheek, correct?
Objection on that, this states the testimony of law.
Overruled.
Is that what Lyle testified to?
Do you recall that?
No.
Did he tell you what he did?
No, he'd never told me what he did.
You heard the last shot.
Yes.
You saw him come out.
Yes.
He didn't say, I finished her off.
Certainly not.
Did he say something to you after that?
He said nothing. He just sat down in the archway of the living room when I was across from me on the stairs.
And you were on the stairs.
Yes.
And then you had a conversation with him.
Within a few minutes, he came over because I was shaking, and he said it's going to be all right.
He said, it'll be all right. Let's just go back and pick up all the shotgun shells, and let's do as we had planned. Let's go to the Taste of LA.
No. At that point, I said that I didn't. Maybe the police weren't coming, and I didn't want to talk to the police, and maybe they weren't coming, and some words were exchanged about maybe I was right, maybe they weren't coming, and that's when Lyle went to get his gun, and I think he was walking out at the foyer when we went to pick up the shells.
Your brother was walking out of the house, and then you decided to pick up the shells?
He was walking out of the foyer, and it was at that moment after he had retrieved his gun that the idea about picking up the shells came up.
Isn't it true that you had planned to pick up the evidence beforehand?
No, it was definitely not planned to pick up the shells. Looking back, I realized that I was just in a strange state, and that there was no reason to pick up the shells, but it was just something that we thought of doing right after.
You were so confused and in a strange state that you were thinking purposefully that we have to pick up the shells so there will be no evidence in that room. And you did that, didn't you? You were thinking clear enough to think, we better get those shells because they might have our fingerprints on them.
I don't.
Objection compound.
Sustained. Rephrase the
Yeah, that's a
question.
long ass question.
Mr. Menendez, were you thinking that you should pick up those shotgun shells because they might have your fingerprints on them?
Yeah, that's what was in my mind. I don't know how clear I was thinking or how clear you have to think to do that, but it just went into my mind, and without even thinking about whether it was important or not, we just did it.
Well, you made a conscious effort to pick up those shells. Isn't that right?
Yeah, we made an effort to pick up the shells.
You were thinking clear enough to think, we have to pick those shells up because they have our fingerprints on them, weren't you?
I don't know how to answer that question. Yeah, I guess, yes. I wasn't thinking very clearly. I was shaking at the time, and I didn't think we picked up all the shells. I was surprised to read in the paper that we had, but that was what we did.
In fact, when you discussed it with your brother that you better pick up the shells because they had prints on them, you went back into the room and you looked for every shell you could find and you picked up every shell you could see, correct?
It wasn't a discussion. I'm not sure which one of us said it. He believes that he said it. I may have been the one that said it. I don't remember. It was just something that someone said, so we just did. We weren't discussing things and then doing them. An idea came up and we just did it. At that point, we thought maybe we can get out of here and maybe we won't go to jail. And so we were just doing things that night on the spur of the moment.
Now, isn't
But
it
certainly
true?
picking up the shells was not a discussion like that.
Isn't it true, sir, that you had a plan that the gunshots would go off, that would establish the time of the killings, and that you had an alibi for that time? Isn't that correct? You said that you were going to say that you were at the movies, that you would go to see License to Kill, but it was packed. You couldn't get in, so you would go to see Batman. Wasn't that part of the alibi here?
Well, that must be.
Are you saying before? That was what we tried to do afterwards, and it didn't work out. But because they wouldn't sell us tickets.
Sir, isn't it true that your brother had discussed with Perry Berman that he and you would go to the movies? So he had told one of his friends that they would be at the you would be at the movies prior to going to the Taste of LA, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay and speculation.
Well, it's also a compound question if you want to break it down into this, what we do.
Did you know, sir, that you and your brother had planned to go to the movies at 8 o'clock that night?
I didn't know that. Apparently, Lyle had plans to meet someone at the movies that we didn't show up for, but I wasn't aware of that.
You had no idea that you were going to go to the movies that night?
Lyle mentioned that he wanted me to be back. When I went back to the house, either between 12 and 1, he mentioned that he wanted me back at a certain time because he said we might go to the movies or I might do something. I don't really remember what he said. I learned afterwards that he actually was supposed to meet someone inside the movies that he was hoping the police wouldn't find out about. But apparently that didn't work out either.
The first time you ever found out about the movies was when?
I believe it was when I went back to the house between 12 and 1. I'm not specific about it though.
So you found out that you were going to go to the movies between 12 and 1 when you returned to the house on Sunday.
Yes, I believe
And your
so.
brother had told you to come back by 8 o'clock so that you could make the movie. Is that right?
I believe that's what he said. I'm not certain it was for the movie, but I know he told me to get back at that time. So I'm really just speculating.
You're aware that then you were covered for that period of time as to your whereabouts.
We weren't covered. That's what I'm trying to explain to you, that
Let me ask you
we
this.
weren't covered because a friend of mine was actually inside the movie that we were supposed to meet, and we didn't show up. It was certainly no plan before.
You had both seen Batman before, correct?
Yes.
And you had both seen License to Kill before?
I don't know if Lyle had, but I had.
So if you had said that you were at Batman and someone asked you about Batman, you would be able to describe what occurred during that movie, correct?
Yes, I would have been able to say what the movie was about. I saw it.
And after this Batman movie,
1 second, guys.
there was
Sorry, I've got to pause real quick. All right. Whew. Sorry about that, guys. Just like minor pet situation, that's all. Indy's back, so we're good. Everything's fine. But yeah, Indy was being naughty. She was not playing nicely. But everything's fine. Mountain Princess 207, thank you so much for gifting 5 Legal Bites memberships. Veronica B, Lisa White, Christina M, Karen Vaughn, and Jessica B, you have all been gifted memberships by Mountain Princess 207. So welcome back to Bite Club. And thank you for gifting some. So wonderful generosity once again. So thank you. So okay, cool. Everything's good. Let's continue on.
This plan to go to the Santa Monica Civic Center to go to the Taste of LA, correct?
No,
There was not that plan.
no.
You knew nothing about that plan.
To go to meet Perry at the Civic Center?
Yes.
Yes, but when you refer to plan, are you referring to plan to kill my parents? That didn't happen. My brother, I'm not sure when I had the idea of going to the Taste of LA. I know I had it when we asked my parents to go out that night, that we were going to go over and meet Perry at the Taste of LA. But you're confusing me here.
Sir, I thought you said that you told your parents you were going to go to a movie, but you had no plans to go to a movie.
Exactly.
That you were really going to go to the Taste of LA.
Exactly.
And now you're saying you didn't know you're going to go to the Taste of LA?
No, I knew at that point we were going to go to the Taste of LA. We just wanted to be out of the house. We could have gone to the valley for all I cared. We just wanted to be out of the house. And since Perry was at the Taste of LA, we were planning on going over there.
Now, this time period would have accounted for your whereabouts during the time that your parents were killed, correct?
Objection, beg your honors, to which time period?
Rephrase the question, please.
Sir, there was a plan for you and your brother to say you were at the movies, correct?
Afterwards, when we talked to the police?
Yes.
Yes.
And that day, was there a plan to call your brother's friend to tell him you would be at the movies that day? Was there a plan?
I don't understand that question. To call my brother's friend to tell him we'd be at the movies. We didn't show up. All the police had to do was go and talk to him.
Your friend, or your brother's friend, Perry Berman, spoke to your brother that day, didn't he?
Objection on cross from hearsay, beyond his personal knowledge.
Objection overruled.
I thought you were referring to the other friend, Perry Berman.
Let's talk about Perry Berman for
Okay.
a minute here. Did your brother tell you that he had a discussion with Perry Berman and he told Perry Berman that you and he were going to the movies that night, and after the movies, you would meet him, Perry Berman, at the Taste of LA?
I don't remember if he told me that. I know he testified that that's the conversation he had with Perry, but I don't know if I was aware of that at the time.
When did you become aware of that?
I know I was aware of that when I got back to the house and he told me about the conversation he had with Perry that day. And he said,
Was that at 12 o'clock?
no, that was at 9:30.
9:30 at night.
Yes.
You had a discussion with him about the alibi at that time?
No, he told me what he had talked about with my dad during the day. He talked about the armitage camp and that he was scared of my dad's reaction about it. He talked to me about the conversation he had with Perry. And I guess at that point, he had made plans to meet Perry that night. I'm not clear on it, though.
Now, you actually went after the killings, after you picked up the shells. Actually, when you were picking up the shells, did you testify that you turned on the lights at that point?
Yeah, the lights were dimmer. So I guess you turned the lights all the way up.
They were low before.
I think they were off.
And you then turned them on.
Yes, one of us turned us on.
Okay, when you say you think they were off, could they have been a dim light?
Dimmed all the way off. But once it's all the way off, it clicks.
Right.
But right before it clicks, the lights are all the way off.
So you don't remember it clicking then?
Well, I'm not the one that turned off the lights.
Well, you turned them on?
I don't know if I did or my brother did. I don't remember. But one of us did because the lights were on when we were picking up the shells.
When the light goes off on a dimmer, it clicks, and when it goes on, it clicks, correct?
I believe so.
And
Objection or actually misstates electricity.
All right, counsel, let's just confine ourselves to the legal objection.
All right, calls for speculation.
Objection overruled.
do you remember that, sir?
Remember what?
Well, you were testifying about the dimmer, and
Yes.
you just turn it.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that either Lyle or I turned the lights all the way on, and it's a dimmer light. So we turned it all the way on to pick up the shells.
So there was full light on,
Yes,
and you saw the crime scene,
yes.
and you saw your mother laying on the ground.
I was actually trying not to look. I know she was there, but I didn't. I just wanted to. Luckily, the shells weren't in that direction. Luckily, the shells were against the wall, under the table, and around the hallway area.
Did you see your brother go behind the sofa to recover any shell casings,
No,
shells? You did not see him do that?
no.
Were you watching what he was doing, or were you just picking up the shells that you were interested in picking up?
I was just picking up the shells that I saw. I really wasn't watching what he was doing.
Did you have to get on your hands and knees and crawl around to pick up the shell casings?
I know one of the shells was underneath the table, the 8-side table in the back. I got that, but I don't believe I had to get on my hands and knees and crawl around.
How many did you recover?
I have no idea.
Do you know how many your brother recovered?
No.
With the emptied shells, what did you do with those shells?
We put them in the car and eventually threw them out either that night or the next morning.
Well, what did you do with them when you picked them up?
We brought them to the car.
Did you put them in your pocket first, or what?
I don't remember. We may have. I don't remember.
Now, there was blood spattered on you, correct?
There were teeny red dots on my jeans.
On your jeans?
Yes,
Where else?
that's all that I saw.
What color shirt were you wearing that day?
I don't remember.
Did you have a t-shirt on, or did you have a sweater on, a jacket?
I don't remember. I don't think I had a sweater, but I don't remember what I was wearing.
Now, you saw these teeny red dots on your jeans.
Yes.
They're very obvious.
No. I saw them when I was. I guess I saw them when I was in the car. I don't really remember when I saw them, but I know that I had them on my jeans.
And did you see your brother with blood spatters on him?
No, I didn't see anything on them.
And he shot your father in the back of the head at close range, didn't he?
Apparently.
Coroner testified it was a contact wound.
Apparently.
And he also went up to your mother and shot her in the face. It was a contact wound.
Apparently.
And you saw no blood spatters on him at all?
I know he didn't change his clothes.
Now, after you gathered up these shells, what happened?
We left.
You simply say, okay, we have them all. Let's get out of here.
We didn't believe we had them all because we figured that the shells were all over the place and I wasn't going near my parents at that point. I just wanted to get out of there.
Let me
at
ask
that-
you this.
Excuse me, could the witness be permitted
Yes.
to finish his answer?
Are you done?
Finished?
I don't even remember what I was saying. I don't remember.
That
Next
sucks.
question.
I hate it when that happens.
Sir, you indicated that you were generally between the coffee table and the television set, and that's where you did your firing from,
Your Honor, this has been asked and answered.
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Now, why is it then that there were some shell casings that you thought were by your parents?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Because I had no idea where the shells were. Shells just apparently fly out of a shotgun. I don't know. I had no concern about where they were going or what was happening. I didn't know where they were. I thought they could be anywhere.
You saw a number of shotgun shells over to your right. Is that correct? As you were shooting, after you finished shooting, did you see the shotgun shells had been ejected to the right?
I didn't see that after I finished shooting. When I went to pick up the shells, I noticed that most of them were, you don't have the diagram, but most of them were around the door area.
But you felt that you did not pick up all of the shell casings because you thought some were by your parents, correct?
I couldn't imagine that I picked them all up because I figured they would have gone all over the room, and I wasn't going all over the room. I thought maybe some were under the couch or different places, but I wasn't going to check.
How would they have gotten under the couch?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
What I'm saying is I don't know. I don't know where they went, and I just picked up the ones that I saw. I didn't care about any of the rest.
How many did you pick up?
I don't remember.
You have any idea?
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled.
I really don't. I apparently picked up what my brother didn't.
You remember picking up more than 5?
No.
Less than 5?
No. I don't
You have
remember.
no
what-
idea.
I have no idea.
Once you picked up these shells, did you look at your brother to see whether he had completed his task of picking up the remaining shells?
I don't remember that. I just remember leaving.
So as soon as you finished picking up the shells that you had seen, you left the room
Yes.
and you were in a hurry.
At that point, I wanted to get out of the house.
Okay. At that point, you wanted to get rid of the evidence.
Yes.
Okay, so what did you do?
We got in the car and left the driveway, and I believe we made a right. I'm not exactly sure.
Who was driving?
My brother was.
When you arrived at the car, were you the first one to the car?
I don't remember.
Do you remember opening the trunk or the door to put your gun in?
I believe the trunk was already open, but I really don't know.
You don't remember.
I know I did, but I don't remember how I did.
You put your gun in the car
Yes.
and you're holding on to the shells.
Yes.
They're in your hand.
I just don't remember whether I had them in my pocket, in my hand, under my shoulder. I don't remember.
At some point, you saw your brother in the car. Did he look like he was in a hurry too?
We wanted to get out of there.
Was there a discussion there?
I don't remember a discussion there. I know that there was some talk when we were driving away on a different street, but at the house, I don't remember.
Now, at the house, when you were picking up these shells, was there any discussion there?
I don't remember.
Don't remember at all.
No, I don't remember any discussion.
Was there ever any discussion once the lights went on that let's make sure mom and dad are dead?
Definitely not.
You didn't hear any moaning at that point, did you?
I didn't hear anything at that point.
No sounds?
None.
The moaning occurred before you ran out to get the extra cartridge to give to your brother, correct?
Yes.
Now, you indicated that your brother told you that your mother was trying to crawl.
When he didn't tell me that night.
He told you that sometime later.
Yes.
When was that?
At some point, sometime later. Sometime. I don't know what time later. At some point, he did.
Was it a day later?
Like I said before, I think we had a discussion or a talk when I first told him that I didn't want to live anymore, about some of the things that happened, but I don't know if we talked about that then or when. I just don't remember when.
You did talk about that before you talked to Dr. Oziel,
Yes.
so you knew about that before then, before
Yes.
October 31st,
Mm-hmm.
1989. But yes?
Yes.
But there was no discussion, as you recall, inside of the house as the lights were turned on, your parents were lying there, your father was seated and your mother was lying there. No discussion at all.
There was talk before on the stairs, but once we had gone in to pick up the shells, I don't remember any discussion.
And then without any discussion, you left, you went to the car, and then your brother arrived there and you put the guns in the car, and there was no discussion there either?
I don't remember. I know we got out of there in a hurry after that.
Okay, so you were in a hurry, and your brother got into the car, started up the car, and took off.
Yes.
And where did you go?
Like I said, I believe we made a right. At some point, we headed toward the theaters.
That's in Century City?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you describe what you did
What I did when.
during that period of time?
You're not gonna object.
Let's be more specific.
Okay.
Mr. Creel.
You and your brother had gotten into your car.
Yes.
You had the guns that you killed your parents with in the car. You had the shells that had your fingerprints with you from the family room, and you started to drive away.
You're not gonna object to form the question as assumes facts and remedy.
Overruled.
I don't know that the fingerprints had my that the shells had my fingerprints on it.
That was your concern, though, correct?
It was a guess. That's why we picked him up. Yes.
Okay. You have testified that your brother was driving the car.
Yeah, he always drove.
Did you discuss with him that you now had to go to the Century City, Century 14 theaters?
I know one of us said where we're going to go, where we're going to say we were, this and that, and it may have been me that just said head over to the movies. I'm really not sure.
Okay. Now
It was-
there was already a plan to go to the movies. Isn't that right?
No, there wasn't.
Your brother had spoken to Perry Berman earlier that day and had said that you were going to the movies, sir. Isn't that right?
Objection on prosecution.
Rephrase the question.
Did you have any knowledge that your brother had discussed with his friend Perry Berman that you and he would go to the movies that night?
Apparently, he was meeting a friend, Carrie Parker, at the movies, but I didn't know that. I didn't know about Carrie Parker till afterwards.
So when you got into the car and you suggested, let's go to the movies, you just were lucky.
Objection, Your Honor. Question's been vague, so.
Objection sustained to the form of the question. Why don't you ask a different question, please?
Was it luck that you happened to guess that the movies would be the place that your brother had told Perry Berman that you were going?
No, it wasn't lucky. It was luck that the police didn't talk to Carrie Parker, but it wasn't luck that we headed toward the movies. We had at some point said, go to the movies. I don't remember if it was Lyle or me. It may have been Lyle thinking that Carrie was there. I don't remember is what I'm saying, but at some point we did head toward the movies.
So you had no idea that your brother Lyle had set up this alibi about being at the movies with Perry Berman. You had no knowledge of that. Is that right?
I don't think he set up an alibi with Perry Berman to be at the movies.
Oh, the alibi was with the Taste of LA then.
No, he told Perry, my understanding of what he testified, that he was meeting a friend at the movies.
You don't recall him testifying that he was going to go with you to the movies?
I guess so. That's why he told me to be home earlier.
Now, at some point, you started to head to the Century 14 theaters, correct?
Yes.
Did you have to give your brother directions?
No.
He knew where that was.
Yes.
And what happened when you arrived at the complex?
We parked on one of the side streets. It may have been in front of the theater. I don't really remember. And we just ran over to the ticket counter to get a ticket for the movie.
Now, your brother had testified that you had parked on a side street and there was metered parking there, correct?
I don't remember meter parking, but if he does, I don't remember it.
You remember parking right in front of the complex?
No, I'm not sure. I think it was in front. It may have been on the side. I don't remember.
Which street would that have been on?
I have no idea.
Where did you have to go from this metered parking to where the theater was?
Up the there's a stairs that go up to a level where the theater is right in front of it. I believe the stairs are right in front of some valet parking area or something like that. I'm not sure.
So you didn't have to go very far.
I don't think so.
Do you remember your brother putting any money into the meter?
I don't remember a meter.
Do you remember your brother testifying that you parked at the metered parking?
Ask and answer.
He said something like that. I don't remember it.
So just I want to point this out really quick because there's been a lot of like repetition in this cross-examination, but you have to keep in mind that he's able to ask something slightly different. If it's slightly different, then it's technically not asked and answered. And so what he had asked here was, do you remember there being metered parking? No, I don't remember there being. Do you remember Lyle paying the metered parking? No, I don't remember that because I don't remember metered parking. And then he asked, do you remember Lyle testifying about paying metered parking? And the objection was asked and answered. Technically, it's a different question. So as repetitive and boring as it is, and also, yeah, Lisa White, I agree with you. I don't know how important that is to literally anything. It has he runs the risk of losing the jury, losing the focus of the jury, losing their attention entirely with these kinds of questions. But technically it's a different question. So it is a proper overruling of that objection. Just wanted to point that out so that you guys can understand.
I don't believe he said he put money in the meter because we didn't wait around for things like that.
But you've forgotten a lot of things. So if he testified that since he was driving, he parked at the meters, do you think that's correct?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
So you parked, you believe now, in the front of the complex?
I'm not sure if it was in the front or on the side or where it was, but we parked next to the complex and we ran up to the ticket counter. That I specifically remember.
Did you have to go up a couple of flights of stairs?
I believe there's just the original flight of stairs in front of the parking area and that valet place. But at that point, we just ran over to the ticket counter.
Your brother testified about the metered parking about a couple of weeks ago.
I have, I guess, whenever he did it on cross or direct.
Mr. Menendez, have you since learned that there are no meters there at the Century City Shopping Center?
That's the gotcha?
Oh, I know there's no meters there now. Whether there were at the time, I have no idea. I don't remember a meter.
So your brother does remember the meter, though, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, your brother was.
Sustained.
So you go up.
Yeah, so that's calling for speculation, right? Because he asked him, your brother remembers there being a meter, right? I don't know, ask him. Like, I'm not inside his brain. That was a proper a sustain of that objection. So it seems like the whole point in this is to try to impeach him on whether or not there was metered parking. That's a lot of time and effort and attention for something that is a very tiny detail that really does not change this case. Oh boy. Tish has a question here. I don't remember what the cross-examination during Lyle's testimony was like. How did this cross and Lyle's cross differ? This one just feels like it's meandering so much more. To be honest with you, the details of Lyle's cross-examination, I'm a bit fuzzy on myself because it has been a bit. But this one really is, it feels like it's dragging that much more. Debbie Faison Cook says, Alita, do you think the prosecutor is effective at all? I mean, look, the jury is made up of 12 different people, right? So you can have 12 people looking at this 12 different ways. Some people might be looking at this and saying, yep, I'm with you, Kurayama, the whole way. Personally, for me, as a human being that is watching this, coming in cold in this case, right? I did not look up anything going into initially starting this whole series. I wanted to be absolutely fresh, going into it and to basically take the evidence as it was being presented at trial. Other people, I don't know. Other people might see it as effective. I personally don't. But that's me more talking as a human being than as a lawyer. I think there may have been some questions that I saved. Let's see. Oh, yes. Oh my gosh, there are quite a few. Debbie Faison Cook also earlier asked, do lawyers purposely use up time? I would think they would want to preserve time. That's usually the case because you're only given so much time. I mean, unless you want to at certain points in the trial sort of distract the jury or sort of add fluff for the jury to sort of forget some testimony, I suppose it's possible. But generally speaking, most attorneys want to be efficient with their time. Because I mean, they usually have some time constraints that are put on the case by the judge. Also for attorneys that are being paid by the hour, you also want to be respectful of your client's funds, and not overdo it. I mean, the prosecution is, they're paid by the state, so it's a little bit of a different situation. But I don't know. There's all kinds of reasons why it doesn't make sense to be sort of like wasting everybody's time. Sarah V, also member for 5 months. Thanks, Lita, for bringing us together. Of course. Thank you so much. And I don't know if did I see if Sarah V already left? I hope not. I hope you're here. And I apologize for not bringing this up earlier. Thank you so much for being a member for 5 whole months. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Flashfan85, I know this is Cross and he's allowed to be aggressive with his questioning. But is there a limit to how condescending he can be? I wanted to quote Mean Girls and be like, the limit does not exist. So, there is an argumentative objection. Most courtrooms are not as sensitive as this one, at least from my experience. But yeah, there is, there is a limit in most courtrooms. You'll find it at some point. But more practically than that, though, is it has an impact on the jury. If you're being an a-hole unnecessarily, sometimes that can really backfire because the jury will start to um they'll start to make formulate thoughts about you and your side, sometimes based in part on the attorney's personality. That can happen. Is that proper? I don't know. A whole discussion can be had about that. But it does happen. It does happen. So, I mean, yeah, you don't want to go too far, basically. Veronica B, will they have a chance of a new trial with the Menudo witnesses or a deal? I don't know. I haven't been following the specific details on those filings for that. I think when it comes to appeals, like I said earlier, appeals are so hard to win. They're really hard to win. So I think the default generally is expect it not to work out. And if it reaches a certain burden, or if it measures up to a certain level, to a certain standard, then they might. I mean, generally speaking, yeah. I mean, like I said, it's chances for any kind of an appeal are pretty slim. Cat Love Dreaming Peach question: did Kuriyama ever win any other notable cases? I don't actually know the answer to that. Sorry, excuse me. I need to breathe better. I don't know. I haven't looked up any other cases that he's been a part of. I feel like there were some people in the chat that have talked about other cases he's been on around this era. But yeah. Okay, let's see. And I think there may have been a few questions here as well. Tish says, if the prosecutions only could cross-examine one person, who is more important to cross-examine, Lyle or Erik? Well, I don't think I have an answer for that, because we do have 2 different juries here, right? One for each defendant. And they both are a material part of it. So yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have a good answer for that. So, okay, sorry. Coming on through. Okay. Oh, your everyday sheep says not sure about Kuriyama, but Pam Bozanich lost the McMartin preschool trial. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Oh, also, Debbie Faison Cook, another question. In jury instructions, the judge always says not to think about the judge leaning toward one side or the other, but I feel like I'd want to. What do you think? I mean, the judge is not supposed to be showing any kind of bias, right? The judge is not supposed to be showing that they think one side is stronger than the other. Um, I understand people wanting to sort of use that as like a cheat code, right? To say like, oh, if the judge thinks this, maybe, but that's not the way that it should be. I guess that's the only thing that I can really say about that. So, okay. All right, let's continue on.
Up and you go to the theater, and what happens?
We don't go into the theater. We go to the ticket counter.
Okay, what happens there?
I believe there's 2 people in line. I'm not quite sure. And he eventually asked for a ticket to License to Kill. And that was a movie playing there.
And you told him, I've seen that movie. I don't have to see that movie again.
No, at that point, we weren't planning on seeing a movie. We just needed to be at a place. At the time, my parents had died. And I believe he told me later that the reason he originally didn't say he went to see Batman is because he thought his friend was in Batman, and his friend would know he wasn't there.
You have a good memory about certain things that he's testified and not so good about other things. Is that right?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
No, I don't know. I don't remember exactly what he testified on the stand. I'm talking about what he told me later, either that week or the next week after my parents died. That's what I'm talking about.
So he discussed the movie, but he didn't discuss what your parents were doing when he entered that family room before you and your brother killed your parents. That was not important to you, was it?
What they would,
Objection, Your Honor, it's compound.
It's argumentative as well.
Okay.
Sustained.
It's noon, Your Honor. Does the court wish to take a break?
All right, we'll take our recess until 1:30. Please don't discuss this matter with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about
Tiny cup.
Either alternatively or in addition thereto, she has an 11:45 flight tomorrow night. to
Okay, we're
Nashville.
gonna fast forward through this.
As far
Let's see.
as
This
deal,
is probably gonna go
In
over
session.
here.
Give
Okay.
one.
Whoop. Let's go back just a little bit.
You had testified.
and both jury panels as well,
here we
and
go.
you may continue your cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, you had indicated that your memory had been faulty regarding the actual time when you went into the room and you shot your parents. Remember that?
I don't understand what you're saying. My
That you
memory-
didn't remember the shooting.
No, I didn't.
Okay. You had testified that after you had shot all of your ammunition, that you went outside and that you gave one shell, one cartridge to your brother, correct?
Yes.
I was asked to
And-
answer 4 times.
All right, let's move on to some new area.
And what you said was that you knew she was dying. The question is, how did you know that if you didn't know that you hit anything?
I heard the noises as soon as and that's what just freaked me out, and I just wanted to get out of the room. And that's how I knew.
So you heard the noises as your parents were being shot?
No, after.
Afterwards, you heard the moaning.
Yes.
And that's how you knew that you had hit somebody.
Well, I had assumed that I hit somebody, sir. I mean, I had fired so many rounds in that room that I probably hit everything.
You know, you were testifying about going to this Century 14 Theater, correct?
Yes.
And that you parked and you and your brother went upstairs
I guess it's an upstairs, if you call it.
and you went to the box office.
Yes.
And who did the talking?
My brother.
And do you recall what he said?
He had asked about the movie License to Kill, and I'm not sure if I recall what he said then or if he told me later. I'm confusing the two. I know what happened.
You were right next to him at the time?
Yes, I was.
Now, when you went there, were you trying to get tickets for the 10:30 showing?
No, we were trying to get tickets for the 8 o'clock showing or somewhere around the 8 o'clock showing.
And what do you recall being told to you by the person at the ticket, the window?
Judge, to form the question, since that's not.
Overall.
It wasn't told to me. It was told to my brother who was speaking, but I was right there. I don't remember exactly what she said, but in essence, that License to Kill was sold out and that we couldn't get tickets for that movie.
So this was after the movie was already over.
It was near the ending. I don't know what time it was. My time was completely distorted at the time.
If the movie started about 8 o'clock, what time was it that you arrived at the Century 14 Theater?
Assuming that my parents died at 10 o'clock, then somewhere around 10:10, 10:15, right around there.
Didn't you testify that you waited around for the police to come?
Yeah, we waited around.
And you just sat around waiting for the police to arrest you?
I sat on the stairs. I figured that the police, there's roving patrol in Beverly Hills. I figured they'd be there in, less than a minute, 2 minutes, something like that. No one showed up.
Do you recall the neighbors coming in to testify about what time it was that they heard the gunshots?
Yeah.
Check the form of the question, it's improper.
Overall.
Yeah, that's why I assume it was around 10 o'clock because that's what they said.
Was it between 10 and 10:15 that you were shooting your parents?
My recollection is that I got home at like 9:30 and that it was probably before 10 o'clock. But if they say it was 10 o'clock, then I'm off.
And that if it was after 10 o'clock?
I didn't look at a clock. I didn't look at a watch. I don't know the exact time.
At some point, though, you gathered up all this possibly incriminating evidence, and then you went to your car.
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered several times.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
And how long did it take you to get to the theater?
It's not far, maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes.
And when you got there, are you saying that the movie was still going?
That was my belief. Yes.
But you didn't know what time it was.
No, I didn't know what time it was.
So you didn't know whether that movie was over or not.
I didn't know. Well, I thought it was still going, but whether it was over or not, I wanted to get tickets for the 8 o'clock showing.
And your brother asked for the 8 o'clock showing of License to Kill?
I don't specifically remember the time of the showing, but it was around there for the License to Kill movie.
And what was told to him?
That it was sold out.
And this is at the end of the movie, they were willing to sell you tickets if they hadn't sold out?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
After that information was overheard by you, was there another request by your brother?
Yeah, he then asked for the Batman tickets for the 8 o'clock showing or whatever time Batman started.
And that was already over.
I don't believe it was over. I thought she said something like it's almost over, but they couldn't sell us tickets anyway. She wasn't able to sell us tickets for the 8 o'clock showing of Batman. So at that point, he just said, then fine, just give me the next ticket for the next showing.
So are you saying that you then had tickets after you killed your parents? You bought tickets for the movies?
Yeah, we had tickets for the, I guess it was 10:15, 10:30, or 11 o'clock showing, whatever showing it was. So I remember looking at the tickets and seeing that there was a timer on the tickets and that they were, I obviously couldn't give those to the police.
And the tickets were given to you by your brother?
Yes.
So you held on to the tickets.
Yes.
And what did you do with those tickets?
I had ripped them, and once I found out that they were the wrong time, I just threw them out.
When did you do that?
When?
Yes.
I believe it was in the car. I believe it was in the car that I had checked the time.
And you just threw them in your car?
I don't know. I may have thrown him out the window. I really, I don't remember.
Now, isn't it true that when you spoke to Detective Zoller on September 17th, 1989, you told Detective Zoller that you and your brother had gone to the movies at about 8 o'clock, and your mother and father were seated on the couch in the den, the family room, watching television? You
I
remember telling him that?
don't remember it, but I probably did. That's what I wanted him to believe.
And at that point, at around 8 o'clock, did you actually go to the Century 14?
At 8 o'clock?
Yes.
No, if I went at 8 o'clock, I would have had tickets.
In fact, didn't you have tickets?
If I had tickets, I would have given them to Detective Zoller.
How would you have done that?
When he asked me for the tickets, I would have handed it to him.
Isn't it true, sir, that you threw your pants away after they were bloodstained and the tickets would have been in your pants, so you didn't have those tickets to give to anybody?
No, that's not true. I did throw my pants away, but I had already thrown the tickets out the window or left them someplace in the car, so I didn't have the tickets in my pants at that time.
Wasn't that the plan, sir, to go to the Century 14 to buy tickets so that you could say that you were at the movies, and then when you had blood on your pants, you threw away those pants, and then you didn't have those tickets anymore?
Are you saying that
At 8 o'clock?
Lyle and I went to the theater at 8 o'clock, that I had gotten tickets, and I, by mistake, threw them away with my pants?
No, not by mistake. You got blood on your pants, I believe you said. And
Yes.
You threw your pants in a dumpster, correct?
Yes.
You had forgotten that you had your alibi tickets in your pants, didn't you?
No.
You didn't forget about that?
No, I did
understand.
not. I didn't. You,
Okay, I get it here. So what Kuriyama is trying to say is that they, in fact, already did go to the movies at 8 o'clock. They did buy those tickets that were proper alibi tickets, and Erik messed up by accidentally throwing those away with the pants, and so therefore they had to sort of scramble and figure out, this new sort of alibi. In other words, like, they had this master plan, but they bungled it. That's what he's trying to say. It I don't know. For me, it's not landing. There doesn't seem to be any kind of indication, uh, like nothing to support that theory, um, to include this testimony, right? So, I mean, he's just trying to throw spaghetti at the wall and see if it sticks, is what it seems like is Kuriyama is doing here. Okay. All right, I guess.
you're saying that I threw away alibi tickets in a dumpster? No, I would.
You wouldn't have
That
done
didn't
that.
happen.
You wouldn't have done that?
I probably wouldn't have done that if this was so planned out, but that didn't happen. I threw the tickets out the window afterwards.
Did you know before you shot your parents that there would be so much blood that you would have to change your pants?
No, I hadn't even thought about it.
So you didn't think about maybe throwing away evidence in the case when you threw your pants out?
No.
When you told Detective Zoller that you had left for the movies at 8 o'clock, were you lying to him?
Yes.
Now, do you remember what your parents were going to have for dinner on Sunday night, the 20th of August?
I wasn't home. I have no idea.
Didn't you tell Detective Zoller that your parents were supposed to order, they said they were going to order Chinese food. So so possibly that's where they wanted it. That is with respect to the phone that was next to, I believe, your mother on the couch. Was that another lie?
I lied to him many times. I don't remember saying that, but I might have.
See, normally in any kind of a case, you know, a prosecutor's going to ask a question and be like, "So were you lying?" to try to like catch them or make them uncomfortable. But he's like, "Yeah, I did lie to them. I lied to Detective Zoller and these guys a bunch of times during a certain period of time. Yeah, I did. So now what? He's openly admitted to that. Um, where is let's see here. Oh, Cat Love Dreaming Peach. Yeah, wouldn't there be proof that they bought tickets if they if they had been at the theater? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like there's no forensic evidence, there's no, receipts or credit card transactions or anything that place them there. And that's the problem with asking a question like that when you have nothing behind it. Is what are you going to do when he just denies it and you have nothing to impeach him on it? There's no gotcha moment. All you're doing is, like I said, throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping that it sticks, hoping that the jury just picks up your side of the story for reasons other than actual evidence. So it's, yeah. Anyway.
That's on the September 17th statement that you gave to Detective Zoller in Cranberry, New Jersey, at page 17. You don't recall saying that? You don't recall saying that, sir?
No.
Would you have been able to make up something like that at the spur of the moment when you were questioned like that by Detective Zoller?
Objection, calls for speculation.
That they were in the process of eating Chinese food?
No, you had said when the question was asked of you by Detective Zoller about the phone that was on the couch found where your parents were killed, you said, and they were supposed to order, they said they were going to order Chinese food, so possibly that's where they wanted it, meaning the phone next to them. You mean to tell me that you just made that up at the spur of the moment?
Objection, argument.
Overall.
I must have. This was at 10 o'clock at night. I don't know why I would have said they were ordering Chinese food. I have no idea what they ate for dinner that night. It might have been in the pictures in the kitchen. I don't know. But I have no idea.
Well, why did
I'm
you
confused at the question.
Why did you say that on September 17th?
Maybe if you'd show me where I said it, I'd be able to tell you why or how.
You approach, Your Honor?
Yeah.
Page 17, lines 7 through 9.
What Kuriyama is trying to get at here is that he's trying to convince the jury that they did in fact premeditate all of this. They planned this all out. They bungled the plan, but they had a plan ahead of time. This is premeditation, is what he's trying to prove here. I don't think he's doing a good job of it.
I would need the page before to be able to tell you what context it happened in.
Did you see the question before?
Yeah, we were talking about apparently we were talking about the phone, but I don't have the page before, so I can't tell you. Yeah, I'm saying I don't know why the phone was there. Why I said they were eating Chinese food, I just made it up. The whole conversation was about why the phone was underneath the pillow. And I was telling him, I don't know why the phone's underneath the pillow. And at that point, I stuttered over here and I said maybe they were eating Chinese food.
No. I believe you said, and they were supposed to order, they said they were going to order Chinese food.
Right, that's exactly what I said. I said a lot of things in that conversation. I don't know. We had a long conversation about why the phone was behind the pillow. I really don't know.
And so when you said that, you just made up a lie right at the spur of the moment.
Apparently, I just made up a lie. I mean, did they order Chinese food? I don't know. I don't know what happened.
You were home that day, and they told you that they were going to have Chinese food for dinner, apparently.
No.
That's according to your statement.
Definitely. Well, that's what I told him. Yes. I told him I was home all day
Why would you lie about that?
because I didn't want him to know what was going on that weekend. If he knew what was going on that weekend, it would have been pretty obvious who did this. And that was not my point of having that conversation with Detective Zoller.
So to say that you were home and your parents said that they were going to have Chinese food, and then we went out to the movies, that would somehow disclose everything that you had in your mind?
You're completely misstating what happened in that conversation. Completely misstating it.
The statement is there's a question to you about the phone, and you say, well, my parents had said that night that they were going to order Chinese food. Maybe that's why the phone was there.
No, what you're leaving out is that for 2 pages before that, I was telling him I didn't know why the phone was left behind the pillow. It could have fell there by accident. And then finally, I come up with they were going to order Chinese food. That's exactly what happened.
So that was a lie.
You say they were eating strawberries and
I didn't say anything, sir.
and cream. I have no idea what they were going to do that night, sir.
Yet you tell Detective Zoller that your parents told you that they were going to order Chinese food that night.
Yes.
And that was a lie.
Yes, it was.
Why did you do that?
Overruled.
He was trying to find out why the phone was behind the pillow. And he kept asking me why the phone was behind the pillow. And I was saying, I didn't know. Apparently, that's what it says in the conversation. So finally, I said they were going to order Chinese food.
You said they told you they were going to order Chinese food.
Yes.
So that means that you were there that day, apparently.
That's what I was trying to portray to Detective Zoller, yes.
That you were there that day.
I even told Detective Zoller that they were home watching a tennis match during the day.
And that's what they were doing.
Yes, that's what my brother told me they were doing. I don't know where I got the statement from. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Whether I just made it up, whether my brother told it to me, I don't know.
I don't know why this
Are
is
you
so
saying that that's something
unbelievable
that you didn't
to
know?
Kuriyama.
Well, apparently they weren't ordering Chinese food, so I was wrong. Is that right?
I don't know what your parents were doing.
I'm going to object to this.
All right, let's not have questions asked by the witness or retorts by the prosecution. Ask the next question, please.
How do you know when you've lost control of the witness on cross-examination when they start asking you questions and you start answering? I mean, come on. Okay. All right, let's continue.
It's your testimony that you were gone that whole day, correct?
I was gone the entire day.
So you wouldn't have known, you wouldn't have spoken to your parents, so you wouldn't have known what they were going to have for dinner. Fair to say?
Fair to say that they did not have Chinese food for dinner
How do you know that?
I'm going to object.
because
Overruled.
there's no Chinese food in the kitchen. So they didn't have Chinese for dinner. You're saying that they had blueberries for dessert. There was no Chinese food in the kitchen. I made it up. They weren't ordering Chinese food at 10 o'clock at night.
Did you check the kitchen that night to see if there's Chinese food there?
No, but I looked over the photos afterwards.
Could they have thrown away the containers?
Objection, not cause for speculation.
Sustained.
You don't know what they had that night then, do you? Since you weren't there.
If my memory is correct, there was a Domino's pizza box in the kitchen. That's my vague memory of what I saw in the pictures. But I don't know what they had for dinner because I wasn't there.
Also, who cares? Who cares what they had for dinner? Like he already testified that he lied to the prosecutor or to the police, and he's admitted to this like 5 times at this point. Like, who cares? This is like, you know, who brought the cupcakes or the muffins? Sorry, who brought the muffins for, you know, the DEP team? And why did they bring muffins in? Like, this is a whole nothing burger of like, did they have Chinese for dinner? Did they have pizza? Did they have, I don't know, something else? Did they have blueberries? Like, it's like, okay. All right, let's let's move on, please.
We're going to go on to the October 31st 1989 session that you had with Dr. Oziel.
Do we have to?
Now, with regard to that meeting that you had with Dr. Oziel in October, the end of October, about a week prior to that, had you spoken to Detective Zoller on October 24th, 1989 in Beverly Hills?
I spoke to him at some time in October, yes.
And did Detective Zoller inform you that there would be a LA Times article about the killings of your parents?
I don't remember. We discussed a lot in that conversation.
And was it discussed?
I'm gonna object to this, customer phone.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, directing your attention to October 31st of 1989. You
Who is he?
came into town to have a session with Dr. Oziel, is that correct?
Objection to state the testimony.
Overruled.
No.
Where were you on that day?
On
Your Honor,
October.
I'm gonna object to this line of questioning based on our discussion with the psychologist now,
Well,
until,
this is an appropriate area of cross-examination. Overruled.
Where was I on October 31st?
Yes.
I was at Dr. Oziel's office.
Had you been in town that day?
What do you
I
mean by
believe so.
in town?
I mean, I thought I was in town the whole ending of October.
Now, you went in to see Dr. Oziel after having called him up to make an appointment?
I called up his secretary.
Okay. And was that a day or two in advance?
I believed it was the day before.
And you arrived at his office, and you'd been there before, correct?
Yes.
In fact, did you have a pretty good relationship with Dr. Oziel?
objection 1016.
Overruled.
I hadn't seen him in many months, other than at the memorial service.
But what was your relationship with, what was your opinion of him at that point?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Your Honor, I'd like to be heard on this area, please.
It's not necessary. Overruled.
My opinion of him?
Yes.
He was an easy guy to talk to about certain issues.
And so on that day, October 31st, you went in to see Dr. Oziel.
Yes.
And what did you tell him initially?
Just how I was feeling lost and how depressed I was and how I didn't know where my life was going anymore. And that I thought I might try out tennis for a while and that that's what I had planned to do. And that I really wasn't sure how long I'd be living.
And were his notes correct? You said that you reviewed his notes. Were his notes correct about why you had come in and what you had said initially?
No, I don't believe so. Certain things stand out to me in his notes. The beginning doesn't. I think that's what he said, though. I'm not sure.
Well, that in fact was what happened. Is that right?
Yes.
And after telling him that you were depressed, did you ask him to leave the office so that you could talk to him? Go for a walk?
After he wasn't getting why I was depressed, I then decided to tell him.
You had not told him up to that point that you and your brother had killed your parents.
No, I hadn't.
Did you specifically request that you leave the office for a walk?
Yes, I did.
And when you took this walk, was there a point at which you decided that you were going to tell Dr. Oziel that you and your brother had killed your parents?
Yeah, I was struggling with it the entire walk. I walked up to my church. I walked to this store on Santa Monica, and I was telling him about things that I wanted to do, like write a book about my dad. And I was trying to work up the courage to tell him. It was not an easy thing to say.
Did you tell him that you had depression and that you had dreams and you had vivid pictures of your parents being murdered?
When? Before or after I told him I killed my parents?
At any time?
I could only have said that afterwards.
So you were having vivid pictures of your parents being murdered, you told him?
If he says I told him that, I don't know. I don't have vivid pictures of my parents being murdered.
Now, on October 31st, 1989, were you having vivid pictures of your parents being murdered?
I was having vivid pictures of me shooting in the fire and the horrible scene afterwards. And that's what was giving me the nightmares.
Well, these nightmares, was it because you saw the fire of your gun, or was it because you saw your mother's face and your father's face as you were shooting at them?
No, you couldn't see faces in the room that dark. It was basically because of what I saw after I went back before the 911 call.
Going over this again. Again. Oh my God. This is like this is what purgatory feels like, is what I imagine. Just Kuriyama doing a long cross-examination of a witness forever.
You took a walk with Dr. Oziel.
My hair was shoulder length when we started this cross-examination. That's how this feels.
Yes.
And you walked into a park?
Yeah, it's the church area, the Church of Good Shepherd.
And at one point, you turned to him and you said, "We did it."
That was later back by his office.
Sometime after you had taken the walk,
Yes.
you told Dr. Oziel, "We did it."
I don't know if I used those exact words, but I told him that we did it, yes.
Now, did he ask you to describe what happened there, or did you go back up to his office?
No, at that point, he started saying that he thought I was going to tell him that and that he had expected that. And I was trying to talk more about then why I was suicidal and hoping he would be able to help me out and telling him about my dreams and how I felt guilty for certain things. And it wasn't until after that we started talking about the details. But we were talking about that up on the way to his office.
So when you told him that you and your brother had killed your parents, you started to talk about the events leading up to the actual killing.
No, the first thing I told him, he asked me what happened, and I told him that Lyle and I ran in the room with 2 shotguns.
That's the first thing you said to him?
Yes.
And what exactly did you tell him?
I told him that, and I told him I told him everything that happened afterwards. I was crying at the time and pretty hysterical, and he was trying to calm me down, and I was just blurting out everything that we did afterwards.
Now, you were pretty depressed. That's why you went to see him, correct?
Yes.
You wanted to get this off of your chest, that you and your brother had killed your parents.
No.
You didn't want to get that off your chest?
I did want to get it off my chest, but that's not why I went to see him. I hadn't planned on telling him.
But once you started to tell him, it started to flow out of you, correct? You started to feel better about telling somebody what you did.
Once I started to tell him, and after I had told him downstairs that we did it.
Yes.
Yeah, I told him. I told him what happened.
And you told him why you did it?
No, that didn't come up next. That he just wanted to know. He was asking a lot of questions. He was asking me where we got the guns. He was asking me what happened then and what happened there, and he wanted to know more and more and more. And then he started asking who knew what and what did the police know and so on.
Do you remember his note stating that after you told him that we did it, you walked into the office and began to reveal in elaborate detail all the events leading up to and following the actual murder of your parents? Do you remember those notes that he had?
And that's what his notes apparently say. Obviously, that's not true. And
why is that so obvious?
It's obvious because he says that in his notes, but he doesn't give the details that he says I gave him.
Now, he says in his notes, these notes were done shortly after these two sessions he testified, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustained. Objection sustained.
Do you recall, sir, the notes indicating that you,
I'm going to object to this as hearsay. That's our client.
I would object to the use of the notes as well, Your Honor, versus what the witnesses testified.
I'm going to object to on the basis that I don't know. I should have thought that through before I paused it and started the joke. But it seems like everybody has an objection to this. Let's see what the judge says.
Witnesses, yeah.
Overruled.
Oh, overruled on
Mr.
everyone.
Menendez, you've
I'm also
indicated,
going to object, Your Honor, to the use of the notes based on prior 402 rules of this court.
Overruled.
Mr. Menendez, you indicated that you read the notes, correct?
Yes, I did.
And those notes indicated that you specifically said that you had watched a television show which dealt with the son murdering a father,
Oh my God.
correct?
Again?
Does it use that exact language?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, that's what he says I said in the notes.
And that you and your brother Lyle had begun to talk about how similar your father was to the father presented in the television show. Remember that?
Object to this area is already been done.
Overruled.
Is that
Yes, I
correct?
believe he also says that in the notes.
Absolutely been asked and answered.
He indicated
Several
that
times now.
you told him that Lyle had not seen the entire program, but only the last portion of the show, correct?
If he indicates that, then that's what he indicates.
And that you told Dr. Oziel that the conversation about killing your father was casual at first, with you and your brother asking each other what it would be like if perhaps the controlling influence in your life that dominated you had in his mind, in your mind, trapped you, made you feel inadequate, and prevented you from doing what you wanted to do was simply not there anymore. You and your brother discussed that, didn't you?
Yeah, that's
Your Honor, this has been asked and answered 3 times.
Yes.
that particular line struck me as odd, because he said we talked about it in a casual way as if that's what people would do. But that's also what he says in his notes.
And that you and your brother
Time is a flat circle, right? Am I right? Certainly feels that way.
tossed back and forth the notion of how your lives wouldn't be worth living if your father continued to exist.
Yes, he says all of that and a lot more in his notes.
And you weren't sure whether you would want to continue living without your father out of your life, correct?
I believe so, if that's what you're reading from his notes.
Now, you indicated that your father, and this is, I'm not going to go on the statement right now, but you've testified that your father was very controlling, that he wanted to tell you what school to go to, is that right?
Yes,
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered this morning.
Overruled.
That he was going to decide upon your career, correct?
Asked and answered.
Overruled.
yeah, Mr. Kuriyama, how this came up in the conversation is this is exactly what Dr. Oziel knew from talking to my father and from dealing with him. And the only things that he mentions in those notes are exactly what he knows about my father, because that's what he was telling me.
Mr. Menendez, did your father tell Dr. Oziel that you and your brother had watched this movie on the Billionaire Boys Club and you decided to kill him based on that movie?
Objection to the form of the question, stands facts not.
Overruled.
Objection by
No.
hearsay convention.
Overruled.
That's our client.
No, I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to how he described my father is exactly the image that he had of my father.
And that's exactly how you've testified here about your father controlling your life and telling you what to do, correct?
No, I said here a lot more things that my father did to me than just control me. That is for sure.
And in
And,
fact, part
Dr.
of it,
Oziel
I
does-
don't think
He
this
did
was
indeed.
substantiated.
Yes, you make it.
And Dr. Oziel doesn't testify to any of that. If he thinks that I killed my dad because he was controlling, which is what he thought and what I led him to believe, because I wasn't going to tell him why, that's exactly right. And that's exactly what's in his notes. And he
So-
says it over and over again.
One moment. I've got to start charging some earbuds because of how long this is taking. Okay. This should still be connected. I just wanted to make sure to pause it so that there wasn't okay. I think we should be good.
So what you told him that day is what he put down in his notes.
No, that's what we discussed.
Okay. So this whole discussion that you had about the Billionaire Boys Club was bogus. Is that right?
No, it wasn't bogus. It didn't happen. I'm talking about my dad being controlling and dominating, as he puts it. That we talked about, and that we talked about on the second too.
And in fact, you were getting tired of that, weren't you?
Excuse me? When
You were
was I?
getting tired of your father telling you what to do and telling you where you were going to live, what your career would be. You got tired of that. You are now a man. You are now 18 years old, and you were tired of that, weren't you, sir?
No, I was tired of the sex. Him telling me what to do had happened all of my life, and I expected it to go on for the rest of my life. It was the other part that I was tired of.
Now, you remember testifying that your father in September of 1988 had threatened to disinherit you, correct?
In
September, I believe you testified September of 1988.
No, he didn't threaten to do that.
He did not?
No, he told me that I was. He didn't threaten to do that.
And you also testified that I believe you said in May of 1989, your mother told you that your father wanted to disown you.
Yes.
And you felt that that meant that you would be completely cut off from the family, and you did not want that, did you?
No, that's not at all what I thought. I knew that he wouldn't cut me off from the family. My relationship with my dad was not one that he was just going to end and kick me out of the house. There was no way he was going to do that. And that's why it scared me. When my mom said that my dad was going to disown me because I wasn't telling him enough details of my tennis, it frightened me because I didn't know what that meant.
In May of 1989, you told your father, I'm not going to tell you what I did with my tennis practice. I'm a man now. I'm an adult. I'm not telling you anything else. Isn't that true?
No, I would never say that to my dad.
Isn't that your testimony, that you told your father you weren't going to tell him your every move in a particular day, and that's why your father decided to disown you?
No, if I would have told my father that, he wouldn't have disowned me. He would have beat the hell out of me. That's not something you tell my dad. What I was doing was just not telling him what I was doing. And when he was asking me detailed questions about my tennis, I was trying to be evasive. I was just saying I was fine. I was trying to keep it private. I wanted to keep some things secret from him. But I certainly didn't tell my dad that.
What else did you want to keep secret from your father?
I wanted to keep secret from my father different girlfriends that I had had. I wanted to keep secret from my father everything.
When you say everything, what do you mean?
I just didn't want the intrusiveness in my life. He would tell me what to do, and that's fine. But in terms of exactly what I was doing in every particular day, I didn't feel like I had any privacy. I didn't feel like I had any. I knew who I was.
And because of that, you're getting tired of your father, weren't you?
I was getting tired of a certain part of our relationship, which I desperately wanted to end when I went to college. But him controlling me and telling me what to do happened since I was born. That was normal.
And now that you were a man, you're almost 19 years old, you didn't want that anymore.
Which
you didn't
part?
want your dad telling you what to do anymore.
Oh my God.
I thought he would have less control over what I did every day when I went to college. But no, I expected him to tell me what college I went to and what I was going to do afterwards. I had always expected to go into business with my dad and that sort of thing.
In fact, you testified that your mother wanted you to go to UC Berkeley, correct?
Yes, she did.
And isn't it true that your father wanted you to go away too and go to UC Berkeley?
No, my mom wanted me to go to UC Berkeley, and my dad would not hear of it. I was staying as close as possible to him.
Sir, do you recall a young man by the name of Ed Fenno who lived with your family in the summer of 1989?
Yes, Ed was a friend of mine.
And do you remember Ed Fenno being there when you got your acceptance letter to UC Berkeley?
He wasn't right there. I remember walking in the door from the mailbox, opening up UC Berkeley, astonished that I had been accepted, and I immediately called my mom because I was ecstatic, and she was real happy as well.
Do you remember your father wanting you to go to UC Berkeley and that you didn't want to leave home? You wanted to stay around. You wanted to go to UCLA, correct?
Nobody's
No,
testified
definitely
at all.
not.
So if he had heard your father tell you UC Berkeley is the best school, go there, would Ed Fennell be lying?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay, that calls for multiple hearsay, and calls for conclusion by the
Overall.
witness.
No,
Overall.
Is that right, sir?
no. Ed's a nice person. I doubt. I'm sure my dad was happy that I got accepted into UC Berkeley, but my dad had always told me that if I got into UCLA, that's where I was going, and that's what happened.
Isn't it true? And in this conversation, you said you didn't want to go to you didn't want to go to UC Berkeley. You wanted to stay in LA.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the question today, what conversation, and also
Can you
object on the basis of
the-
hearsay.
Can you specify which conversation
Yes, Your
you're
Honor.
talking about?
The day that you got this acceptance letter to UC Berkeley, and Ed Fennell was there at your house and heard your father tell you to go to UC Berkeley. You recall that day?
Objection, Your Honor, the form of the question, since that's not in evidence. And
Rephrase the question, please.
Do you recall Ed Fennell being at your house in the summer of 1989?
Asked and answered.
Overall.
In the summer of 1989, no, I don't.
When do you recall him being there?
In November and December of 1988.
When is it that you got this acceptance letter?
Also, yeah, summer of 1989, the same summer that was after he had graduated from high school and right before he was going to start UCLA. You don't get acceptance letters in the summer. You get them in like the winter, spring before. Anyway.
To UC Berkeley?
If he says he was there, then I guess during that time, I didn't think I got the acceptance letter until February.
So Ed Fennell stayed at your house for an extended period of time, for a period of months.
I think it was 2 months. I don't remember the exact time.
At some point, you do recall him living with you?
Yes.
And do you recall your father on the day that you got this acceptance letter telling you that that was the best school you got into and urging you to leave home and go to UC Berkeley?
Definitely not. But he had said that that was the best school that I had gotten into. And he was definitely happy that I got into a campus like UC Berkeley. But the real school that I wanted to go to was Brown. And my dad would not let me go there.
Also, yeah, fair point. Just because it depends on the semester for which you're applying. That is also a fair point. My assumption here was that it was for the fall semester following his graduation from high school. So fair. Absolutely. Good point. Just wanted to point that out.
Was Ed Fennell there when you told your father you didn't want to go away to school at Berkeley, you wanted to stay in Los Angeles?
I hadn't been accepted to UCLA at the time, and there was no school in Los Angeles for me to go to. I don't remember the conversation that you're talking about, though, to be perfectly honest.
You've seen the reports.
No, I haven't seen those reports of Ed's.
Now, your mother told you she wanted you to leave to Berkeley, correct?
Yes.
1 second. I'm going to be right back. Okay, sorry about that. There was There was a little cat that was meowing. She wanted to come inside and hang out. So now I have 3 pets in here: Holmes, Indy, and little Mavi over here, Maverick. She has a cone of shame, which hopefully will be off after today. Okay. Anyway, brief intermission. Let's continue.
And your father was very proud of you for having been accepted into UC Berkeley.
Yes, he was.
And you've testified that you liked to spend a lot of time in Westwood. Whenever you wanted to be by yourself, you wanted to have lunch, you'd go to Westwood. You liked LA, didn't you?
I went to Westwood a lot with the tennis team. That was a hangout place for a lot of kids.
Now,
But
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can put your answer.
yeah, it was a place that I knew every part of, and but I remember. Well, it doesn't matter. Go on.
You felt very comfortable at the UCLA campus, didn't you?
I had never walked around the UCLA campus. I mean, before I was accepted into UCLA, I didn't know much about the campus at all.
You spent a lot of time in Westwood, is that right, when you moved here?
Yes. Once I moved to Beverly Hills, I did.
Okay, and you moved to Beverly Hills before you got accepted into UCLA?
Yes.
So you would go to UCLA before you got accepted into UCLA?
Objection on Westwood and UCLA, I'm not exactly the same.
Objection overruled.
Westwood and UCLA. Westwood's a city. UCLA is a school.
If I don't know if you guys caught that, but Leslie just basically like fed him an answer with that objection. Objection: Westwood and UCLA are two different things. Or maybe not necessarily fed him an answer, but clued him into providing a helpful answer for his own case. Which is it's always fun to see when attorneys do that for their clients.
Westwood borders on UCLA, but there's nothing to do in UCLA if you're not going to UCLA. So,
Did you like the area of Westwood, which is right next to UCLA?
certainly.
And you spent a lot of time there.
Asked and answered.
Sustained.
Finally.
Now,
sustained
isn't it
ask and
true that
answer.
you said that you wanted to stay in
Objection.
LA to go to school?
Asked and answered.
Overruled.
No, I said that I had not been accepted into any campus in UCLA. In LA, my dad had told me it was still when Ed was living there. It must have been November or December, that he knew a man who was going to basically get me into UCLA, and that's where he wanted me to go.
Now, do you recall, we're going to get back to the Dr. Oziel statement. Do you recall that you told Dr. Oziel that you didn't know if you would want to continue living unless your father was out of your life?
No, that's not what I said to Dr. Rosette.
That's not true?
No, it isn't. That's what he said to me, though.
In fact, you were afraid in May of 1989, when you were rebelling against your father, that he was going to cut you off. He was going to cut you off totally. Correct?
Rebelling against my father?
Yes.
You don't rebel against my father. You do what my father says. You do it the way he says. You do it the way he wants. There is no rebelling. There's rebelling in the sense of not telling him everything. But if he finds out about it and he asks about it, you do what he says. I never rebelled against him.
So if you didn't do what he said, he would disown you.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure. I mean, he never said that to me.
Your mother told you that.
That's what my mom told me on a phone in Dr. Oziel's office. And I was very scared about that. I did not know what disowning meant, because it certainly didn't mean kicking me out of the house. So I was sort of worried about that.
1 second. I've got to switch earbuds now. Is this working? Okay, I think it is. Let me just double check here. Sorry, guys, about the interruption. Okay, yeah, this should work. Okay, good.
Now that's what disown means. I mean, were you afraid to just get kicked out of the house so you wouldn't have everything that you had growing up, all the tennis lessons, the car, and everything that you got? Were you afraid that you would lose that when your mother told you that your father was going to disown you and cut you off from them?
I'm going to object to the question. Actually, it's the first part when Mr. Brown.
Right, excluding the first part.
Hang on. Something just happened to my earbud here. Let me, oh gosh. All right, let's reconnect. Okay, maybe this will work.
Part where
Okay.
there was a definition of the word disown. Do you understand the question?
The question then is, was I afraid of being disowned?
Yes.
No, I was never going to be cut off from my parents in terms of their wealth. They had tons of money, and I really would have loved to go on away to a boarding school. That would have been a dream. But being kicked out of the house, that wasn't going to happen.
So when you testified in front of these two juries that you thought you were disinherited, you knew that wasn't true.
Oh,
You said you'd never get cut off from their wealth. Is that right?
While they were alive, of course, they were going to make sure their sons had everything and looked best in society. I was disinherited. I was out of the will. But obviously, they were going to keep sending me to school and paying for my cars and paying for my clothes and my tennis and everything.
That's what you assumed?
Well, that's what was going to happen.
How do you make that statement that you know that's what was going to happen?
Well, if I had never told my brother what was happening between my dad and I would have gone on to UCLA, and it would have continued throughout UCLA. And assuming I had lived and hadn't decided to just end it, it would have gone on. They'd always given me everything my entire life in terms of financial stuff.
You had been well taken care of all your life. And so when your father, through your mother, said that he was going to disown you, you were worried about that, weren't you?
I was not well taken care of my entire life. I had every dime I ever wanted, though. That's for sure. But I was definitely worried when she said they were going to disown me. I didn't think for a moment they were going to kick me out on the street. That wasn't going to happen. They weren't going to be able to explain that to their relatives and to their friends. That simply wasn't going to happen in their social status and the image that they wanted to portray about this family. And that's why I was concerned about what she meant by disown.
Now, you were hoping that they wouldn't kick you out. You were an adult. They could have just said, okay, you're on your own now.
That would have been great.
Excuse me, Your Honor, but I don't think that was the question. I do believe it.
All right, just state your objection. All right, so objection sustained. Rephrase the question, please.
Isn't it true, sir, that your parents, you are now an adult, your parents could have just cut you off as your mother had told you your father intended?
They could not have done that.
Now, do you recall telling Dr. Oziel, back to the October 31st, 1989 statement, you recall telling Dr. Oziel that after watching this movie on the BBC, that you and Lyle had the discussion about your father being similar to the father depicted in the BBC movie, and that you turned to each other and you were trying to decide whether or not you would make the clear decision to engage in murder, correct?
Objection.
No.
Objection.
No, that never took place, and it was certainly never said in that session.
You recall in Dr. Oziel's notes that he said that
Maybe he'll answer differently the sixth time. I don't know. That's a consummate optimist.
you told him that it had to be soon and could not be delayed, that Lyle wanted to wait to plan it out more thoroughly. Do you remember that?
You can object to that hearsay and confrontation grounds as to Lyle Menendez.
Overruled.
Remember
Excuse me, that statement?
Yes.
I'm not sure if I remember reading that. If it's in there, then that's what he wrote in there.
and that you told
So are
Dr.
you asking whether he made this statement to Dr. Oziel? Is that what your question is?
Yes, Your Honor.
Let's phrase it that way.
Okay. Did you tell Dr. Oziel that?
No,
Did you tell Dr. Oziel, this is the next line, that you and your brother drove to San Diego, obtained false identification, and purchased 2 shotguns with false identification, and then you drove back to Los Angeles? Do you remember telling Dr. Oziel that?
I told him that. I told him part of that much earlier in the conversation when he asked me why we hadn't been arrested by the police if Lyle and I had bought shotguns, and I told him that we had used my brother's friend's ID, and that's probably why we hadn't. But him and I did talk back and forth about then how long it would be until they traced my brother's friend's ID. That's when we had that conversation. But I certainly never said that I obtained identification down there. That I didn't say. That wasn't true.
You used false identification.
Yeah, that's not what he says.
Did he guess that you had gone to San Diego, or did you tell him that?
I told him that.
Now, did you also tell him that you drove back to Los Angeles and you had an alibi in the form of a wine and cheese tasting party?
When in the conversation are you asking? I told him that we had gone to the movies. I told him that we dropped off the guns. I told him about the wine tasting thing. Or the taste of LA. I told him all of that, what we did afterwards.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that shortly before the party began, you surprised your parents in the room in which your parents were found murdered? Did you tell him that?
I would not have told him that, because that isn't true.
You had testified earlier that you may have said that you used the word surprised.
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the testimony.
Overall.
No, that's not what I'm referring to. Isn't true. My parents died apparently right when the wine tasting thing was ending, not when it was beginning. So he's wrong about that.
Well, okay, so he's wrong about whether it was before or after the wine tasting.
He got a lot of things garbled. I told him it so quickly that.
Let's then focus on the other part of that statement, sir. That you surprised your parents in the room that your parents were murdered in.
Your Honor, I'm going to object and cite the court to page 16270 of the transfer.
Overall.
Excuse me, 17. Now it's 16270.
Overall. This is
You may answer, sir.
proper cross-examination.
That I surprised them. I said we ran in on them. I don't believe I used the word surprise.
You had testified earlier that you may have, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the testimony of page 16270.
Rephrase the question, please.
16271.
Did you ever say that you went in and surprised your parents?
I don't remember saying that.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that you walked in first and shot your father?
No, I said I walked in first, but I didn't say who shot who.
And did you tell Dr. Oziel that your brother followed you to finish off the job?
Are you asking what I told Dr. Oziel and he says I said in the notes? Because what he testified to was different from what he said in those notes. So which one are you referring to?
Did you say that?
That I surprised my father?
Did you say, we've already gone by that one, did you say that you went into the room first, shooting your father?
I said that I went into the room and I just started shooting.
So he didn't make that up.
He made up the shooting the father part, but not the other part.
In fact, you have testified here, you don't know who you shot.
And that's what I told him.
So you told him you entered first and you started shooting. You don't know who you shot, and your brother followed behind you and he shot at whoever he shot at.
Yes.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that the intention was that your mother had to be killed because she would be a witness and because she would be miserable and probably suicidal without your father anyway? Did you tell him that?
The second part he had talked about, but the part about being a witness, and I believe he also says somewhere in there that we could not have killed our father without killing our mother and that it wouldn't have been possible or something like that, was never discussed and doesn't make any sense.
did you tell Dr. Oziel that your mother would be a link to you and your brother having committed the murder?
No.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that as you entered with your pump shotgun, your father cried out, "No, no, no"?
I don't believe I ever used the word pump shotgun. And I said that my dad yelled out. My dad never cried out anything in his entire life. He just didn't cry out.
Okay.
So I wouldn't have told him that either.
All right. So what you want to do is say that you didn't say pump shotgun. You simply said shotgun.
You keep using the word pump shotgun, but I don't refer to guns that way.
Okay. This is what the notes say, the pump shotgun. So you're saying you didn't say pump shotgun.
No.
Is that correct? Page 4.
Divine Inhale with Donna Clifford, 100%. If he's boring us, he's totally boring the jurors. Yeah.
Mr. Menendez, you are quarreling with the use of pump shotgun. Did you simply say you entered with your shotgun?
Probably.
Okay. And that you recalled your father yelling out, "No, no, no," rather than crying out, "No, no, no"?
He says crying out, no,
Okay.
no, no.
Right.
And that simply could not have happened.
What did you tell him then?
I told him that my dad yelled no while we were firing.
And do you recall telling Dr. Oziel that your father died first?
No, I don't recall telling him that. I'm sure he could have assumed that, though.
How would he assume that?
If my mother was still making a noise and my dad wasn't, then he would have assumed that.
Would you have told him that maybe?
Maybe. I don't
Now, the
remember.
next line, your mother, was moaning and did not die immediately. Did Dr. Oziel make that up?
Counsel, let's not argue. If you want to approach, you can do that. Not present. All participants in the trial are present. Do counsel wish to discuss anything before the jury comes in?
All right. So we are going to skip ahead. This is, I think it's like 10 minutes or something that they're going to argue about this issue. Oh, about 15 minutes. Okay. So I know this is often very, very interesting, but we just want to see what the jury sees really for this playthrough. All right.
Okay, we have both jury panels back in court. We're ready to resume with the cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Menendez, again referring to October 31st, 1989, and your session with Dr. Oziel. Did you tell Dr. Oziel that your father had yelled out no?
Yes, I did.
And did you tell Dr. Oziel that your father was the first to die?
I don't remember.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that your mother did not die after the first volley of gunshots?
Yes.
And that she was moaning and trying to crawl?
I guess I said she was trying to call. I recall my brother telling me that later.
And you
So,
actually,
yes.
you actually heard the moaning from your mother yourself?
Yes.
And you told Dr. Oziel that?
Yes.
And did you tell Dr. Oziel that you had to go out to reload the shotguns?
I said that we had to go out to reload, yes.
And did you tell Dr. Oziel that your brother Lyle went in and finally killed your mother?
No, I didn't say that. At the time, Lyle and I believed that Mom was already dead. I believe I also said that, but I definitely said that Lyle fired the last shot.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that you picked up the casings, the shotgun shell casings?
Yes, I did.
And did you tell Dr. Oziel that you took a change of clothes with you
That
after the shooting?
I told them that I changed my pants, but I don't believe I would have said I took a change of clothes with me.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that both of you and your brother, had gotten blood on your clothing?
I may have.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that you changed your clothing and put the clothing into a bag and then dumped it into a dumpster?
Yes.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that you and your brother drove to Mulholland Drive and you took the shotguns and you took them down an embankment, the side of a hill, about 150 to 250 feet?
No, I didn't tell him how far down, but I told him that we had gone to Mulholland Drive to dump the guns.
How far did you tell him you took the guns down?
I didn't tell him how far. At least I don't have any memory of telling him how far.
Did you tell him, Dr. Oziel, that you had covered the guns up?
I don't remember if I told him that.
Did you, in fact, cover the guns up?
I threw some branches, not some branches, just some loose dirt on them. I wasn't able to cover them up, though.
After you covered up the guns, did you indicate to him that you had new clothing, you put the new clothing on and you went to the party?
Yeah, he gets that all garbled up in terms of sequence and how things happened. When things happened. But at some point, I relayed everything that happened after my parents died.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that you returned home after the party and that you went into the house?
I don't believe I used the word party, but I definitely told him that we returned home after the Taste of LA.
And did you tell Dr. Oziel that you looked at your mother and father?
Yes, I did.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that your father's head was bulging out
Yes, I did.
and that parts of your mother and father were blown apart all over the room?
Yes.
So gruesome.
Do you recall telling Dr. Oziel that somebody called 911?
I believe I said Lyle called 911. I don't know what he says.
Do you recall telling Dr. Oziel that the police later let you and your brother go back to your cars that night?
No, I didn't tell him that. I told him that after we had interviewed with Detective Edmonds, that we knew that we had gone back to the car and they told us that we couldn't get into the car, that they had to search it, and that we had left some shells in there and some papers in there, and that if they searched the car, we would have been arrested. And so that the next morning, we were able to manage to get into the car before they searched it. It's essentially what I told them.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that since you had an alibi being the party, that you and your brother were not immediately suspects?
No, I wouldn't have told him that because the party, this Taste of LA wasn't an alibi.
I'm sorry,
It wasn't an alibi.
you never told Dr. Oziel that you had an alibi?
I told him what I told the police about the movies and the Taste of LA, yes.
You never referred to that as an alibi?
I may have.
Now, did you tell Dr. Oziel that the police initially thought that the mafia or some business connection had murdered your parents?
Yes, I did. I'm not sure actually if I told him that or that was common knowledge.
Did you tell him that the guilt was overwhelming?
Yeah, I told him that it was too hard to live with.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that the police had not recovered the weapons?
Yes, we had talked about what the police knew.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that there was no way to link you and your brother since the fingerprints in the house were your fingerprints since you lived there?
No, I told him the one way that I thought they would link us eventually.
You told Dr. Oziel that you thought that the police would link you through fingerprints?
No, I told Dr. Oziel that I thought they'd link us through using my brother's ID.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel, since there were no witnesses and since no one heard anything and since no one could link
Perfect
you and your
crime.
brother to the weapons and the weapons were not found, that there was no way to link you to this crime?
I told him that there was almost no way to link us to the crime other than the guns. I believe we even had a discussion about the fact that we were being taped while watching, while buying the guns, and that eventually the police might be able to find the tape. And I believe I asked him when they recycle those tapes or something along those lines. I don't remember the exact part about it.
You believe you had a discussion with Dr. Oziel on October 31st, 1989 concerning your fear that the video camera was operating when you made the purchase of the guns in San Diego?
Yes, I'm almost positive when he was talking about what the police knew. I was telling him everything that the police could know or might find out and didn't know.
Did you or your brother at any time call down to a Big Five concerning how long they kept their videotapes?
No, we didn't call.
But you were concerned about that.
I was concerned about that, yes, afterwards. I didn't want to go to jail.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that you believed there was no way to tie you or your brother into buying the weapons at the San Diego gun store?
No, I told him just the opposite.
You told him that there was a way for the police to find you?
Yes, I told them that if they checked the tape or if they linked Donovan Goodrow, that they would find him. And I specifically remember it because Donovan had called the house. Detective Zoller, I guess, told Lyle, and Lyle told me or something like that, that Donovan Goodrow had called the house that morning or the next day after my parents had died and had spoken with Detective Zoller. And we figured that he'd link it up.
Donovan Goodrow didn't know where his license was, did he?
No, he didn't.
Objection, I call for speculation.
Sir, did you call Donovan Goodrow and tell him on the 18th of August that you had used his license to purchase shotguns?
Certainly not.
So there's no way that even Donovan would know that you purchased shotguns on his license, isn't that right?
No, I'm not saying Donovan would know that. No, definitely not.
In fact, it wasn't your picture on that license.
I didn't think the picture mattered.
It wasn't your name on the license.
No, it was a friend of my brother's.
and it was a fake ID that you used in a town 120 miles from here that you used to purchase these shotguns, correct?
Yes.
And you told Dr. Oziel that there was no way on earth to link you and your brother to the purchase of those shotguns in San Diego. Isn't that correct?
No, I told him just the opposite.
You told him that the police would find out that you had used your brother's acquaintance's ID to buy shotguns in San Diego. You thought that.
No, I told him that the police might find out, and that's why we had the discussion about how long the tapes of a monitor that monitors everything that happens in a gun transaction last. And Donovan was one of my brother's old best friends, and I explained that to him, not that he was an acquaintance.
Did you think that the police had any idea whatsoever that you had used a bogus ID in purchasing these shotguns?
No, I didn't know I was hoping that they didn't know that, and I had figured that they didn't know that since they hadn't arrested us. But I knew that we were the main suspects at that point.
On October 31st, you believed you were not suspects?
No, I believe that we were. I started believing it after the conversation with Detective Zoller on the 17th.
Of September?
Yes.
Was that, do you recall having another conversation with Detective Zoller on October 24th?
Objection, Your Honor.
On the basis.
We had discussed this last time.
Had you gotten that piece of paper that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you want to discuss that?
I'm sure we can.
Okay. All right, we're now organized to take our recess for the afternoon. There's still, by the estimate of counsel, a fair amount of examination before the direct or the cross and the redirect is completed of this witness, and that'll resume tomorrow. And just to remind you all not to discuss this case among yourselves or with anyone else, and not form.
Okay. All right. So we have reached the end of this. Let me just make sure there are some questions here that I've saved. Bronwyn W. Why does the judge keep adding objections? Isn't that improper? Judges, they can not necessarily, I don't know about make an objection, but they can rule on an objection. They can make a motion on their, they can make their own motion. What am I saying? Words are coming to my brain. Basically they can, it's usually, not done. Usually judges are going to say, I'm not going to, I'm not going to interfere in this process. It's up to the parties to object. But sometimes there'll be enough going on that the judge will kind of intervene and say, all right, like this opposing counsel is not doing their own, not doing a good enough job on their own. I'm gonna have to help them out. Yeah, long answer. AB short clips. Was there any criticism of the judge after this trial? By the way, hello all. Hello. And there were some answers in the chat, so I say those as well. Your Everyday Sheep says a couple other judges have publicly criticized Weisberg. Megan Williams says other judges criticized him, but mainly to do with the fact that he limited their evidence and testimony in the second trial. So that's helpful. I don't know, because I haven't really dug into the other sort of stuff around this case. I wanted to go through the trial first before looking into all of that kind of stuff. So, okay. That is it for today. Thank you so much for joining me, you guys. This has been another great installment, even though this is like, a total slog of a cross-examination. But we're working our way through it. This is what the jury saw, so we're watching it as well. I appreciate so much, all of you guys sitting and watching it with me, whether you are in the chat or watching on replay and commenting or just lurking. And of course, as always, thank you to the mods for helping to guide discussion, because not everybody agrees. Sometimes folks are playing devil's advocate. Sometimes folks just see a different perspective entirely. And I love seeing the conversations in the chat and in the comments. Folks agreeing or disagreeing, but doing so in a way that is productive and constructive. And, we can all sort of get a new understanding on the case, and on the evidence, and on, everything that is happening in court. So, all right. That's for me. Does it? There's going to be more trial recaps coming out. It's probably going to be a flurry of them tomorrow. So trial recaps of the Jonathan Majors trial, of course. So anyway, keep an eye out for that. And members only stream on Friday. All right. Okay. Thank you guys so much. And have a great rest of your week otherwise. All right.